With a mission to deliver fiscally responsible, highly dependable services to the citizens of our community and the region. With integrity and professionalism, this is the City of Albany Commission meeting with Mayor Bo Duro, John Howard, Ward 1, Mayor Pro Tem Matt Fuller, Ward 2, BJ Fletcher, Ward 3, Chad Warbington, Ward 4, Bob Langstaff, Ward 5, Demetrius Young, Ward 6, with Interim City Manager Stephen Carter, City Clerk Sonia Tolbert, and City Attorney Nathan Davis. This is the City of Albany Commission meeting.
Good morning. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 17th, 2021 work session of the Albany City Commission. We have a full agenda today. Could we begin by calling the roll? Ms. Tolbert.
Ward 1.
Here.
Ward 2.
Here.
Ward 3.
Here.
Ward 4.
Ward 4's here.
Ward 5.
Here.
Ward 6. Ward 6. Mayor.
Here.
Mayor.
Mayor's here. We have two public hearings, then we have a speaker appearance. The first public hearing is a joint public hearing for a landmark designation. We have certain documents from the HPC that are in the agenda packet, including a rather lengthy letter from Ms. Buchanan to a Ms. Allison Ashbrock of the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. Who will be speaking to this item? Mr. Forgy? Also see we have Ms. Buchanan and Mr. Harden and Angela Gibson signed up.
Good morning.
Yes.
This is a joint public hearing between the City of Albany and the Albany County Historic Preservation Commission. And the purpose of this hearing is to give the public the opportunity to comment on the potential designation of the C.B. King Law Office building as a historic landmark. Right now, it is in the historic district in Albany, but designating it as an individual landmark does a couple things for it, which is the reason for pursuing this. First, it brings more attention to the historic significance of the building. And second, it exempts it from some of the requirements of the Albany floodplain regulations. This is important because in order to preserve the historic character of a building, some of these regulations can't be met without changing a building significantly. So there are exemptions provided in the floodplain ordinance. This designation would make this building eligible for those. So there are several of the members of the Historic Preservation Commission in the audience, and I do want to introduce them. We have Valerie Buchanan, who is the chair of the Preservation Commission, Bryant Harden, Angie Gibson, and and Molly Swan are all present. And if there are any members present on Facebook, would you please just put here in the comments so we know that you were in attendance. Angie Gibson would like to speak a little bit on the importance of this building, just so you all have a little bit more information and the public has a little bit more information why we're pursuing this. After this hearing, the Preservation Commission will take it up at their next meeting. If they decide to designate it or recommend designation as a historic landmark, it will come back to you all for a final decision. And that decision will be in your September meeting at the soonest. Depends on if they have further consideration for it. The designation report also went to the state, Ms. Allison Asbrock, as you noted, Mayor. It went to the state for their review. If they had any comments, it's possible that it would go longer, but September would be the earliest it would be back to you for a decision. With that, Angie, would you like to come up?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, my job is to tell why we believe and why this particular building and that whole area exactly in that area of Mercer and Monroe fits into the historical significance. When historians are looking at criteria to determine whether or not a person or a building is historically significant, They usually determine, first of all, if that significance resulted in a change over a longer period of time. They also look at if that historical person had a connection to any later trends that resulted into something positive for our society. Now, if we put those definitions together, we know that the building that's known as the C.B. King Law Office, originally a real estate office. C.B. King, along with his brother, the mentorship that took place out of that office, which represents a fort for us, is where the strategic battles took place, representing everybody for equality. But it also nurtured mentors like Herbert Phipps, Judge Williams. It also, Elizabeth Holtman, who went on to be one of the investigators for Watergate, Dennis Roberts, who is a well-known civil rights attorney. C.B. King represented law cases like Johnny Johnson, which, as we know, is one of the reasons why our city is a little bit better when it comes to treating our workers who work in our maintenance and our waste facilities, because of the effort that went on in there, in that building, and what he represents, and his brother Slater represents with the real estate office, also is the foundation for what we now know as our land banks. So if you take all of the history and put it all together, and I probably could stand here forever and connect whatever the trends that led to future change and positive change that came from that building and from the people that it represents, we believe that it fits the definition of historical person, historical people, and historical significance.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Any questions? Any other presenters, Mr. Forgy? No, sir. Okay, any questions for Mr. Forgy or Ms. Gibson?
Mr. Forgy, can you come back to the dive? Yes, sir. Ms. Angie, stay up too. Mr. Paul, you did say something about the floodplain, right?
Yes,
so
sir.
It's located in the floodplain?
Yes, it is.
So in reference, anything east of South Monroe back to the river is considered in the floodplain?
More or less. Much of South Albany is in the floodplain. So I'd have to show you a map to say exactly, but much of South Albany is.
Okay, so when you say much of South Albany is in the floodplain, so would that be true to follow South Monroe all the way out to, is it Johnny William Road?
Pretty much, yes, sir.
Okay, that's it, Mr. Mayor. And Ms. Andrew, good to see you again. Let me ask you a question. Thanks for the information and data that I get received, and I share the historic preservation concern, and I think that when you look at icons like the late attorney Mr. C.B. King that was known worldwide, and looking at the bill, and I think that it would be prudent for this commission to make sure that we preserve it and we try to enhance and to build up the surrounding areas that where the business is located. And I think it was on the news a couple of weeks ago, whatever was talking about it, that we got to instill in the next generation the importance, educate, connect, and engage. That one of Albany onlys was a civil rights attorney that represented numerous peoples of color throughout the United States, and some have branched overseas, that we should do as much as we possibly to preserve this building. And when visitors decide to visit Albany, they can say, well, we can go to 502 South Monroe and see where the icon that civil rights attorney C.B. King fought many years for injustice and equality for all mankind. So thanks for the data and thanks for the input.
Well, thank you. And I think that Albany should be the first people to lead that campaign into making sure that that area is designated as historically significant, because it does have a connection all over the world. And the letters that we received voicing the support for the building didn't just come from Albany. They came from all over the place. And each person reflected a different memory as to why it's important. So I thank you, and I want to acknowledge when I sent my letters out to everyone that you did respond back to me. So let me make a correction for that too. So thank you. Thank you all for even listening to us. Thank you.
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions for the presenters? Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions.
Mr. Fletcher.
Well, not really a question, but first of all, when you have somebody like Miss Angie on the case, I've learned you don't really need any more presenters. You know, the floodplain doesn't scare you because we're looking at recreation in floodplains. So it's just something that you have to work around when you're in Albany. You've heard me say before, you know, over the years that I've been here, that when I went to Montgomery, Alabama, to their Civil Rights Museum, I learned more about Albany in Montgomery than I did in Albany. I love history. I love telling the real history. And I very seldom show my hand, but I am pleased to say that this one will get my vote, and I will hope that I get 3 others to look at this, because this is, it's just history, and it's what made Albany what it is now. So thank you for your time. Mr. Forgy, thank you. I mean, you two, I could probably give you other buildings y'all need to work together on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm glad you said that, because in my travels, everywhere that I go, people are talking about Albany.
Yeah.
And it's the good things that they're saying about
Well, I mean, you know, we're history, civil rights movement. There's a lot of history here, and, you know, if we can keep the junk out of the real history.
Exactly.
You know, there's a lot of history, and Rochelle, I would love to have seen Rochelle Beasley be here, because she can always put that economic twist to something that the taxpayer needs to hear, because ultimately sometimes they just hear the bottom line and we lose them. But Rochelle is a master, Ms. Gaskins is a master of saying, this is what it will mean to the community. So, and I'll be pursuing that too, and by the time the vote comes, I hope that she'll have her stats and stand before us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Warburton.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Appreciate you kind of spearheading this, and certainly agree with everything you said. I mean, certainly this property and this area needs to be designated and remembered, and needs to be a learning area for youth and everyone just to remember what took place there. My concern, and just I don't understand going forward, is it appears that the property is kind of in between. It's not structurally sound. It's certainly out of compliance, and it's not torn down. So I don't know where we go from here by even making this designation. What does it do with a property like this in limbo? You know, like so many of our properties in Albany, I wish we would have taken this up a decade ago or 5 years ago. And so I don't know what we do now, or what your plans are, or what your ideas are for taking what's there and going forward.
It's one of my desires of being a member of HPC was not to just preserve and restore, but also sort of lead to advocates that could help. So with permission of the King family, I spoke, being a retired educator, I know the different things that our educational resources can provide. So with the permission of the King family, I spoke to Dr. Parker at Albany Technical College and Mr. Cooper, the director of Turner Job Corps, and they are going to use it as a community project, but also allow their students the opportunity in the trade and the landscaping to also use it as a resource for them to build and learn their skills. Yes, there are guidelines that have to be in place that the family owners are aware of, the property owners, the family members are aware of, I'm sorry. But the main thing that was important to Dr. Parker, according to the guidelines that he has to have, he was glad that the building doesn't have a roof and that it only just have the sides, because that was less safety that he would have to be concerned about the roof falling in on his students. So right now, the way the building looks to him was a blessing. And because the way it is, the way it's structured, that's the plan, to use it as a training opportunity in a community project. So both of these, the director and the president, they have collaborated together and agreed to use it as a training progress for work-based learning for their institution in every area that they have, carpentry, every area that they have. And I have letters here where they committed to that. And Dr. Parker was going to try to be present here if he could, possibly today. But that is one of the plans.
Okay.
So I guess, Mr. Forgy, with the way the property sits right now, are there some things that need to be done immediately to get it, while, you know, great ideas for students in the school to be a part of it, but, you know, that's going to take time. So what would you say from a city standpoint, you know, needs to happen, you know, immediately with this property for safety or whatever?
Well, the property has been stabilized. It is structurally sound. I mean, it doesn't have a roof. It's derelict, but it is structurally sound. It's a masonry building, and right now it's basically just 4 masonry walls that are structurally sound. It does need to be secured to keep people from going in it. So that would be the one thing that really needs to happen to keep people from getting in it. But with this designation, trying to meet the floodplain regulations, because anytime you have to put more than 50% into a building, you have to either elevate it or flood-proof it, which would have made this project very expensive, and it also would have changed the historic character of the building. So this designation will allow a rehabilitation to take place, which will keep the historic parts of the building historic and also allow it to be financially feasible. The attention that this is bringing to the building also is allowing other people to come out and volunteer and to help make this happen. So there may have to be concessions on the city's part not to pursue the demolition of this building, but I believe that in the long run it's worth it, because this is a tangible representation of an important part of Albany's history that I don't think we could lose, and it may take a little while. Some of the best preservation projects take a long time, and they cost a lot of money, but in the end, everyone's glad that it happened. I think this will bring tourism to Albany. You know, African American tourism, civil rights tourism are growing markets, and these are reasons that people would come visit Albany, to see the things in Albany that led to the civil rights movement or that contributed to it. So I think this is a win-win. It may take a little while, but I think it's worth it. That's my opinion.
So from a city standpoint, as long as it's secured, you know, I've been by the property, and with my, you know, small amount of construction knowledge, there are nice metal, I mean, the building was constructed really nicely. It's not your typical wood frame. I mean, it's concrete, masonry, steel beams. So it looks at, like you said, as it is stable as it sits, but certainly needs to be some amount of secure just to keep vandals and whatever from going on property. But so you feel like we could reach some kind of compromise to do something temporarily to kind of stop the demo, to secure it, and to allow the wheels to keep moving for a future plan?
Yes, right now it is under a court order for demolition, and that has been my knowledge, is it's been stayed so this plan can move forward. The judge isn't going to let it go on forever without any action. So the judge can always step in and say, you haven't done anything, the building needs to come down.
That's right. Okay. All right. Good. Thanks. So good discuss. You know, the historic designation is one thing, but what do we do with what's there is, and I appreciate all that information. That was good. I appreciate it. Thank you. That's it, Mayor.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Young?
I'm just going to keep my comments brief because I don't think my signal is doing very well this morning, but this is just a worthwhile project. Definitely historical significance for me personally. It's where my mother got her start in law here, and it's actually where my parents met. So I definitely would like to see this preserved for the community. This is a space that's really very personally significant for you know, a vast majority of our African American community, because we know the sacrifices and the significance that Attorney King made for the civil rights movement. And as Mr. Forgy mentioned, it would definitely be a destination for civil rights tourism, which is a burgeoning market, to go along with our new hotel that's going to cater toward that type of clientele coming to Albany. So definitely want to see it preserved and hopefully we can do whatever we can to support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. All right, Ms. Boyd, yes, some background here. This joint public hearing is required by a city ordinance, right?
Yes, sir. The
Okay.
Historic Preservation.
And so the next action will be a decision by the HPC as to whether or not this property will be designated historic landmark. Is that the term?
Yes, sir. Within 15 days, the Preservation Commission has to make that decision.
Okay. So at that point in time, the decision would come back to the city commission.
Right.
And then the city commission would have make the ultimate determination as to whether or not this property will be designated a historical landmark.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. I think that's probably going to happen. I think there's a consensus here that we need to preserve this building. But as Commissioner Warmington was alluding to, we've got to have a PLA in. Because in the agenda item, it says cons, no cons. There are cons. There's going to be some expenses associated with this project. It'd probably be a lot more expensive than we imagine. Secondly, we don't need to designate this property as a historic landmark and allow it to sit there 4 blank walls. I mean, we need to do something, and that is a possibility. There are going to be some maintenance costs. Now, I understand and I appreciate what Ms. Gibson's done and her efforts, but and this is something we are going to have to, as a community, have a plan going forward. I first think that the title to the property has got to be transferred, whoever the family owns it, and I think, of course, Fletcher mentioned going to Montgomery and learning more about the Albany movement. My youngest son went to college in Memphis, and it is amazing the presentation on the Albany movement at the National Civil Rights Museum. It's the information that's there and the exhibits. It is wonderful. I think we can and should do more with ACRI, and I want to involve the museum in this project. I'm not making the decision, but I could see a situation where the law office was open in conjunction with the Civil Rights Museum every Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 4 o'clock or something. We had a docent over there. In this presentation, I've been doing some reading about this in recent weeks. What Mr. King did in the early 60s, it's amazing, but it talks about this law with these civil rights workers were charged with sedition and held in the jail in Americus. One thing, I was researching it, one of the 4, the 3-judge federal panel said this Georgia law is unconstitutional. And one of the civil rights workers, a guy named Ralph Allen, he was then arrested and charged with attempted murder and convicted. And Mr. King appealed his conviction, and the Georgia Court of Appeals threw it out because the jury was not properly impaneled, and that obviously refers to the systematic exclusion of African Americans in juries. You look at what Mr. King did in almost every surrounding counties. He had to file a separate lawsuit in federal court to compel the local authorities to include African Americans. It would seem like after one lawsuit was won, you wouldn't have to do it, but that's not the way it happened. And his contributions should not only be recognized, but should be appreciated by a younger generation. And I think the way we're going to do that is not expect people to go into encyclopedia or historical resources, but to have this property maintained and operating as a living museum to what Mr. King's accomplished and the sacrifices he made during his life. So what I'm saying is, I think we all on board that this is where we need to go, but we need to have a definite plan, and I would suggest that we involve the Civil Rights Museum, because I would think that would be the best partnership we could have. I don't think we'd accomplish much if we just restored the building and it was not open to the public. I think that sort of defeats the purpose. And with that, we appreciate you being here. Ms. Gibson, thank you, Mr. Forgy, for your presentation. Mr. Buchanan, we appreciate the information, and everybody else from the HPC. And I need to recognize Mr. King. He's with us today. Thank you, Ms. King. Would you like to make any comments?
Nothing other than to express my sincere appreciation for having myself, my family, and the Marshall community.
Thank you. And Mr. Forgy, that concludes the public hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the next item on the agenda are proposed revisions to the sign ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Forgy, you have the floor.
Okay. This item is actually a zoning hearing because this is a proposed amendment to the Albany zoning ordinance. The purpose of this, well, this has been floating around for perhaps a year and a half or longer. This was recommended by the City Commission for study to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission reviewed the ordinance and the proposed changes and has sent this back to the City Commission for their consideration. And I'll go over the changes that were proposed both by the Planning Commission. Also, we have had some public input. We had a public hearing. We have reached out to some stakeholders and we got some comments from stakeholders. And also the ordinance was reviewed by land use attorney Frank Jenkins, who is the author of the original sign ordinance in 1999. So I sent you all a track change version of the sign ordinance which shows all the changes, but I'm going to hit the highlights of the ones that I feel are the most significant. The first one being the increase in the allowable number of multi-message signs. Currently, that's capped at 100 signs. These are the multi-message, the electronic changing signs. We have a maximum of 100 permits allowed in the city, and currently we're at about 96. So we will run out of permits and not be able to give anyone any additional multi-message signs if that number is not changed. The recommended number is 150. That is an arbitrary number, but since it took us a while to get to 100, I think getting to 150 will probably take another 10 years. So at that point, we can change it again if need be, or you all can give a different number. A number of the definitions were changed, or there were new definitions proposed. That's a relatively minor addition. The Billboard Rules, I'll go into a little bit in a second. Those were recommended for change by the billboard industry in collaboration with staff, so we aren't just putting things in that they want, we're putting things in that seem reasonable. There's a variance procedure included. Currently, the ordinance does not have a variance procedure, so if someone disagrees with my recommendation, my review of the ordinance, there's no way they can appeal that. So this gives people a way to appeal a decision of mine based on the language of the ordinance. And then there's also a number of just minor editorial changes throughout the ordinance. So as I said, currently the ordinance is capped at 100 for multi-message signs, and we're recommending 150. And we're also recommending allowing multi-message signs in other districts. So they're not allowed in residential districts. We're recommending that they be allowed in certain cases if they are 250 feet or more from a residentially zoned property. So this would, in some instances, allow a sign to go in. Like we've seen a couple rezonings recently, one for St. Teresa's Church and one for Deerfield Windsor School, to allow a multi-message sign because their zoning didn't allow it. In one case, it was over 250 feet from a residentially zoned property. In another case, it was not. So it would have eliminated one of those rezonings, but not both of them. Another recommendation, well, a question, was to change, right now the multi-message sign, a multi-message sign can only occupy 50% or less of a total sign face. So looking at this sign, you can see that the multi-message part that says new listings daily is less than 50%. There was a request to change it to 100% to allow the entire sign to be a multi-message sign. The Planning Commission recommends leaving it as it is, that only 50% can be multi-message, the other 50% or more has to be a static sign. That's the recommendation that came out from the Planning Commission. If you all have any questions or want to change that one, I'm throwing that out. Billboard rules. Right now, the ordinance requires that every year billboards are inspected by an engineer or someone else qualified to inspect the structural stability. I'm recommending that that be changed to 2 years because unless there's a reason to require inspection, if a storm comes through, we can require an inspection anyway. But I think 2 years is plenty long enough if an engineer certifies that the billboard is structurally sound. Also, adding C1 as an allowable district for billboards. Right now, they're only permitted in C2, C3, C7, and manufacturing districts. C1 would allow billboards to be placed in more areas. Now, understand that billboards are capped right now. No new billboards are allowed unless a billboard comes down. So it's a one-for-one replacement with billboards, but no new billboards can go up without taking some down. So adding C1 would allow them in certain areas, but then there's distance requirements, so it's not like they could go in every single C1 area. They have to meet distance spacing from other billboards. They can't go in the historic district, so there are a number of limitations in addition to just the zoning district. Another change proposed change is multi-message billboards are right now capped at 8 multi-message billboards, and these are the changing billboards, the larger ones. They are capped at 8, and we're proposing increasing that to 10. In my opinion, and Planning Commission's opinion, in the past, multi-message billboards were not very attractive. They were very bright. They could be distracting because they put off so much glare. But nowadays, the technology's come along, and it's hard to distinguish them from a paper billboard. They get more advertising out, so they're more economical for the advertisers to use. They look better. But the proposal is also, right now, if someone wants to put up a multi-message billboard, they have to take down 2.5 times the same square footage in regular billboards. So by putting up a multi-message billboard, we get rid of older billboards. We're recommending increasing it from 2.5 to 3.5. So when a new multi-message billboard goes up, 3.5 times the square footage has to come down from regular billboards. Here's just an example of a multi-message billboard. Another addition was to give the city more authority in code enforcement with the required maintenance of signs. So if signs are in poor condition, the city will have the right to go in and, well, first, of course, we would contact the owner and have them remedy the situation, but if they did not, then we would have the ability to go in and take the signs down or repair them at the owner's expense, which would most likely be putting a lien on the property. The variance procedure, as I mentioned, would allow owners to request a variance from the rules. Now, the way this is written is it does come to me for a variance. It comes to the Director of Planning and Development for the variance. But the procedure also then, if I deny that variance, it can go to the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission can then take the variance up. So previously, this method did not exist. This would help alleviate some issues that people have with their signs. That's just more explanation of variance. So the Planning Commission recommends the approval of this, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and address them.
Mr. Howard?
Paul, good morning. How you do?
Fine, thank you.
Let me ask you a question. Your office work in concert with code enforcement, right?
Yes, sir.
How early? I know there's a sunset after an election. The candidate has less than, I think, 7 days to remove a political sign, right?
Well, no. The sign ordinance does not distinguish political signs from any other type of sign. So You can leave up a political sign year-round if you choose, provided it's on your property, and if it needed a permit, it got a permit, or it's within the size that doesn't require a permit. So political signs, we don't look at the message of the sign, so it can be, as long as it meets the rules of the sign ordinance, it doesn't matter what it says.
Okay. And for example, how early can a candidate put a political sign up? Let's say the 2024 election. Could he or she put a sign up now and it will stay?
They could. They could have a sign up now.
On their property?
On their property.
Okay, but not in the right-of-way or on a utility pole?
No, not on public property, on private property with the owner's permission.
Okay. And mention a question. I know in certain areas, and especially in my area, you see a lot of these signs stuck on utility poles or at four-way stop signs saying we buy junk cars, we buy junk houses. So there's responsibility of the code to remove those signs off city right-of-way and utility pole.
That's correct. That is a violation of city code.
Oh, okay. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions.
Ms. Fletcher?
Just a comment, I'm sorry. Signs, a lot of times when you see a sign, it is, and most of the times, an illegal sign is small businesses just trying to figure out how to get the word out. In the last 2 years, our conditions of running a business just continually changes. And I will say that I've seen the city turn their eyes to some things that obviously we all do that's probably not right, and that y'all have the mindset to know that that we're just under all businesses are under just different circumstances right now. The sign that I get more heartburn over than anything, and I do know that this commission several years ago passed this, is the signs that's defaced. That all you see is the light bulb or all, that to me is something that I'd like to get more aggressive about. I understand, a lot of people don't understand it, but when you have like the sign on Spine Center on Meredith and Dawson, when it offers a small business, hey, you want to put your logo up for $100 a month, and it gives them income, plus it puts us out on an area that we probably could have never afforded. So I appreciate you increasing this a little bit, changing it a little bit. But again, I want to really focus on these, the ones that are just defaced and broken, letters hanging, horrible, because that is, to me, the biggest eyesore. I know what Mr. Howard's saying about yard sale, we buy junk cars or this or that, and that is wrong. And, sometimes I've called the number and said, look, I don't want to make an issue of it, but you're on property that I'm fairly certain you put on after 5 o'clock. And I even sometimes go into the companies, say that doesn't look very attractive. But I know that y'all are trying on this, so I appreciate it.
And
Thank you for your
Commissioner, for your information and for the commission, we have been sending out letters to owners of signs that are derelict like that, telling them that they have to put a sign face on it or take it down. And we have been making some progress, but we're working in concert with code enforcement. We're trying to just send them a friendly reminder at first, but they will go to code cases shortly.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Worthington?
Yeah, 2 questions, Mr. Forgy. First one, this appeal process you referenced, is that appeal process solely within your office or with the planning commission, or does it come to the city commission?
It stays within my office and the planning commission. So initially, if someone wants a variance from the rules of the sign ordinance, they will come to me and ask for it. If I deny it, then they can go to the planning commission. If they deny it, then I think it would have to go to court.
Okay, that's through 2 levels of
Yes.
appeals.
That's correct.
And you're saying before this, there was none of that?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Well, there was an appeal process, but the way the appeal is written is basically, I have to interpret the ordinance incorrectly. It's not a variance based on any factors other than I say that it's red and they say that it's black, and if they take it to the planning commission, they read that it says it's red, they have no power to overrule that.
Okay, all right, I think
So
that's.
this gives
that's-
them much more flexibility.
Right, and I think that's good. I like that. The second question is, you mentioned the zoning examples, and I've expressed concern about that in the past. I think we've had 3, both churches and schools, who have applied for zoning purely for a sign for no other reason. So are you saying these changes with that 250 feet, would that have allowed those 3 entities to have a sign without the zoning?
In one case, St. Teresa's School, it would have. The proposal here is that the sign has to be 250 feet or more away from a residentially zoned property. In the school's case, in St. Teresa School case, the houses were more than 250 feet away.
Like where they located the sign?
Right.
Was 200 feet, okay.
Deerfield Windsor is right across the street from houses, so it would not have changed that. I could not think of an equitable way to come up with a general rule that would have applied to both of those situations. They got what they want by rezoning, and perhaps in some cases it requires a rezoning, it requires a legislative action, so the whole community has a chance to give public input, and the commission makes the rule that in this case it's okay, rather than providing the ordinance that in all residential zone. I don't know how it would be worded, but I think in some cases that could be very bad, having a multi-message sign right across from a house.
Yeah, I agree. So this makes a little bit of improvement.
Yes.
To the issue we've had, 30%, 33% improvement. One of the 3 would have been,
Perhaps, yes.
okay. All right, that's it, Mayor, thanks.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further.
Ms. Young?
Nothing further.
Mr. Forkey, can you put that, the information about the variance,
Sure.
get gone through it?
Can you load the PowerPoint back up?
Yes, sir. Can you bring it back up? Now, my concern is this about billboards' proximity to residential neighborhoods. I don't want to get through this and enact it, and then we got folks outraged because they got a billboard. I mean, I think that's one of the most fundamental.
It wouldn't, the distance requirement that I was speaking about with Commissioner Worthington only applies to multi-message signs that are not billboards. So it would be the school sign or a realtor sign, but it would not apply to billboards.
Okay, all right. So we're not talking about the big billboard.
No, sir.
And then let me ask. I don't know. What is the minimum amount of time a display has to be on one of those electronic billboards?
Billboards is 10 seconds, and the other multi-message signs are 20 seconds, and this is a common violation. We have people sign affidavits when they get their permit saying they'll adhere to these regulations, and frequently those are changed because the applicant is often different than the person sitting in the store that has access to the computer that allows them to make those changes. So we do send letters regularly and tell businesses that they're violating the sign ordinance based on that.
Well, I've seen just on Dawson Road, it seems like some of those signs are not 10 seconds. I was wondering, I thought it must be 5 seconds.
No.
3 on some of
It's
them.
supposed to be 20 for the standard multi-message sign.
Okay, well, it could be, I'm at a stop sign and it looks like it's changing more rapidly than it is, because the thing is, they're very distracting. I mean, you know, you see it, especially when it changes. I don't know, something about it draws your attention to the sign, and I think that, I mean, that was a concern I remember when, okay. All right, and you explained to Commissioner Worthington who makes the decision about granting the variance. This is what you went through this.
Yes, sir.
So the planning and development director is the person that's going to have the final say on the variance request.
That's correct, unless there's an appeal of my decision, and then it can go to the planning commission. And because it's a variance process. It has more flexibility going to the Planning Commission than it does currently.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for that. That's all I have. Is there any further information we need on?
No, sir?
Could we get that presentation as a summary? I mean, I apologize, but you marked up the existing ordinances and designated the changes, but in my agenda packet, it doesn't, if we could see that summary, I think it might help everybody.
Okay.
Thank you
We'll do
for
that.
you.
You're welcome.
Next, we go to speaker appearances. Mr. Terry Lewis. Ms. Lewis? Lucas. I'm sorry, Ms. Lucas.
Good morning, how everybody doing?
All right.
I'm here this morning to address the issue about why is there a lack of successful black business in the African American community. And I'll start by saying that, you know, if you take a look, and we're going to talk a little history as I go on. Now, the African American communities is in ruin. Now, you have other people who come from other countries and other parts of the United States and other countries as well, come to the United States, be able to get loans, open up these businesses in the African American community. Now, if the African American are not controlling the dollars in their community, then who are controlling the community? If you are not controlling the dollar in your community, then your community is in ruin. There's no businesses here, no African American businesses here. So when we look at it, what do our children see? When our children go to the store, they're handing their money over to people that don't speak their language, don't look like them, and they are not being taught to invest. Then we trust our elected officials, like you peoples, to invest in the black community or bring black African-American investors here to invest in our community so that our community can grow. So our community is not growing, our community is in ruin. If you look at each and every side of Dougherty County, I'm not worried about New York City, I'm worried about the county that I'm living in, that's Dougherty County. If you look at it, and you will see it's nothing successful in the African-American community. It's just in ruin. In east side of Albany, Georgia, east side, north side, south side, and the west side, it's just in ruin. There's no businesses here, and nobody seems to come here and invest. But these people is allowed to come here in Dougherty County, in the United States, get these loans, open up these successful businesses all over Dougherty County. Let's take North State for an example. Okay, let's start with Blackbeard. Let's start with, then here's Black. Every 500 yards or feet, here's an Indian store. They're controlling the dollars here. Here's an Indian motel. They're controlling the dollars there. Here's a liquor store. In each and every African-American community, this is what we are looking at. We are not looking at anything successful that African-American has established here. Now, let's talk a little history here. Now, Sony was established in 1968. It was shut down for remodeling. I was one of the ones that started cabinets in it. Now, you take Carter Grill, for instance. His business was established in 1968. Carter Grill business today, people are living in it. This is a home, it has become a homeless shelter. Now, we depend on people, our elected officials, to go out and bring people here to invest. Now, Carter, that's a shame before the Lord to look at his business just go down like that. And Sony is up in operation. That is compared, so Carter Grill with Sony, we just comparing the lack of concern, the lack of educational. We have to teach our children to invest in our community. If you're not controlling the dollar in your community, then you're not controlling anything. Whoever controls the dollar in the community is controlling your community. They're controlling your children, your women, the men, and so on. Now, that same way about slavery. Now, at the end of slavery, they say, okay, you are free to go. So if you are free to go, where are you going but you don't have the resources? You have to give people the resources, the tools to survive. The African Americans have never been given the tools to survive. This is why the African American community is in ruin. Not only in Dougherty County, it's all over the United States. And seeing like don't nobody seem to care. And we depend on you people, that our elected officials, to stand up for the African American community and invest and bring people here to invest and teach our children the right way to invest their money. If you want to look at it, the African American community is like, don't nobody care. You know, who cares whether they succeed or not? It's like, only thing that people are concerned about is making money. African American ain't nothing but the economic growth of the world.
Ms. Lucas.
And it have been for years. It's not started. this has been for years. This has been the backbone of the United States for years. The African Americans have took time out to build this country. And they are the most likely people to succeed in having successful business in Dougherty County. You look around Dougherty County, it's no African American businesses here successful. And I go around and I talk to people, why is it so hard for an African American to get along? But these same people come from other countries, continent, or the face of the earth, come right here to the United States and allow to get these loans, open up business in our community, and it's a success, multi-million dollars of businesses. Now, you just look at it. Every 500.
15 seconds, Mr. Lucas.
Okay, every 500 feet, there's an Indian store, there's a liquor store, there's a IGA. It's a successful businesses here only for seeing like foreign peoples, the white males. These are the only people that are being successful. Let's use it for an example. When the bridge was being built here in Dougherty County, the law clearly states that the majority of the population here is 78%. They're supposed to hire African American to help build this bridge. It was not one African American hired here in Dougherty County.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lucas. Appreciate it. Any questions, Mr. Lucas? Mr. Howard?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have no question for Mr. Lucas, but as you may know, that I call myself like a, not a good choice of words, but like an alley cat. But since I don't receive my newspaper on a Sunday, I go out and buy one. And there was an article in this week's newspaper from the University of Georgia School of Business, Business School of Georgia. And I was surprised, I was shocked, I was amazed that they said in the last 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, and they elaborate on the largest cities in the largest states in the United States that where African Americans have a buying power, and Georgia was listed. But what I was amazed and shocked, and still shocked after visiting some of those states, that they elaborate saying that the fast-growing black buying power between 2010 and 2021, and get this, Mr. Mayor and colleague, the states were South Dakota, Hawaii, Idaho, Washington, New Hampshire, Oregon, Wyoming, Arizona, and Nevada. And out of those 10 states, only one was in the New England states, and that was New Hampshire. But I was amazed to see that we are seeing a transition for peoples of color and African Americans in those markets in South Dakota, North Dakota. So what Mr. Lucas was saying is that we got to make sure that the small business that we have in Georgia and in Albany, Dougherty County, that is stable. We are seeing what you call a shift in the population. And the article was very in detail, and I thought about ordering a book from the University of Georgia, but the book was $250. So I said, I guess I can Google it, and what I Googled was correct, that we're seeing this shift of black-owned population and black business are migrating to the west coast of the United States. Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions.
Mr. Fletcher.
Well, y'all gonna get tired of me today, but I do want to, and I know I've seen you up here many times and out in the public, so I do think this is something that's real to you. Carter's Grill, I actually tried to buy Carter's Grill because I wanted to work with Frank Wilson and make it a piece of history. Carter's Grill, the son died, which was a huge hit to that business, and the church was bought, the Carter's Grill was bought by a church. Now, that's private, and they're doing what they want to do with Carter's Grill. And then the father has died, which was an icon in this community. But we constantly have Mr. Lucas people in front of us sort of telling us what we don't do. So I think I want to just ask you, what would you do? If you feel sincerely that we are a part of the lack of successful African-American businesses, which I think there's probably more in this community than what you realize, and I would sit down and, it's an impressive list. I see a couple of African-American business owners in here now that are very successful. And I see, but I'd just like to know, what would you do? What would you do?
What would I do?
Yes, sir.
If I was in your position of maybe, what I would do, I would go out and I would seek African Americans that hold a degree in economic development, and I would try to manipulate them to come to Dougherty County and to invest and get loans to start small businesses and watch these businesses grow. Then I would teach the children how to invest in their community and how to take the money and use it wisely instead of just spending it and throwing it away. Now, if you look at, let's go back to these billboards. These billboards is set up and aimed directly at the African American community to spend and invest in these people. Now, if you look at it, why is it so hard for African Americans to get these loans?
Well,
To
and I
open these type of
I don't
businesses?
want to get into the weeds of this, so I sort of see that the gist of it is you would really reach out to African Americans that you feel like could come to this community and make a difference.
Exactly.
And well, I'm going to tell you, you don't have to sit on this commission to do that. We are begging for mentors in this community to get a hold of these families and to sort of, you can be a mentor.
Okay,
I think you really answered my question right off the bat when you said you'd reach out. And, well, I don't know if manipulating them would have been the right word, because I don't think you can manipulate a strong business owner. But I think if you really are this passionate about it, you don't have to have a title to get out here and mentor and showcase Albany. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Warburton?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No questions?
Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your comments this morning, Mr. Lucas. I just want to say to you that your comments are absolutely correct. We really need to do more to incentivize African-American entrepreneurship in our community. Myself, along with Commissioner Howard, have been really pushing for the reestablishment of a small black business, minority business development center that we've had, in the past, so that we can see those areas of economic investment back into the black community. You probably know, since you've done a lot of research on this, that we've lost more than 40% of our African-American businesses during this time of COVID, and most of them will not be coming back. This is actually this month, African-American Business Month, or Black Business Month, and the mayor will be issuing a proclamation to highlight that before our next meeting, so we can definitely put a spotlight on the African-American businesses that we do have here in Albany, because we do have quite a number of African-American businesses that are, in operation and are seeing some successes. So we want that to continue. We want that to be more. So we do need to take the opportunities when we do have things like the American Rescue Plan come to our city. We want those monies to go to the investment into those black communities, into the economic well-being of the community, because we know that, as Commissioner Howard also said, that there is buying power, there is large buying power, but we know that that buying power does not always lead to economic development within the black community, does not lead to economic growth, because those dollars that are spent in the black community rarely return to the black community in terms of investment, in terms of jobs and things like that. So I appreciate your comments, and just know that I, for one, will be working to try to implement a lot of the changes that you're talking about. Thank you, sir, for your comments.
And I'd like to say one other thing, if I have time to say, is that, you know, I appreciate that your concern and your involvement in the committee, in the African-American community. But what's troubling me is that, you know, our future relies on our children. And I will say that I will commend Mr. Johnson. This young man is running for, I think this is the Commissioner Ward on the east side. Now, he's the type of person that we'll need. We need young minds to come in with different mindsets to build. I mean, because you still have this same mentality, and we are talking about these same issues, but there's nothing to being done about it. It's just talk. You know, we have to show action. We have to get out there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lucas. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to be voting. And
thank you, Mr. Lucas. And the next item on the agenda is an update on the opioid epidemic. Is it Ms. Raleigh? From the Department of Public Health, Ms. Howard? Oh, you on?
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Phyllis Rowland. I'm the public health analyst with the Department of Public Health, and I'm the opioid and substance misuse coordinator. And I just wanted to share the statistics surrounding the overdoses that we have here in our county. Will I be able to share my screen?
Ms. Dawson?
No, that's not allowed.
Okay. Well, in 2020, we had 278 drug overdoses, and 27 of those were fatal. They resulted in death. And this is a significant increase compared to what we had in 2019. 2019, we had 121, and we had 2 fatal overdoses. And as it stands right now in 2021, so far here, these statistics go through May actually. We've had 83 opioid overdoses. And 147 overall overdoses. So far, we've had 15 fatal overdoses, and that's with 70 vials of naloxone administered. Naloxone is a drug that counteracts the effects of an overdose. And I'm working in the community to distribute naloxone throughout the community. It's available at the health department on Wednesdays from 1 to 5. You can just walk in and pick it up. It's available free of charge. We also have some other spots here in the community where I've made sure that we have naloxone on hand. And we have a system called ODMAP. ODMAP is our overdose detection mapping application. And it maps each and every overdose that occurs in Dougherty County that's answered by Dougherty County EMS. Sam Allen, our EMS director, puts these overdoses into the system. That way we can see where our hot spots are, where the overdoses are occurring. And right now our target area is Northwest Albany. That's North Slappy and Dawson Road from the corner of where Wendy's and Krispy Kreme is on back to the Target. And I'm working in those areas to make sure that every hotel, every gas station in that area has naloxone on hand. We have a lot of overdoses that occur in the parking lots and in the bathrooms of gas stations. They also occur, we found several people drug overdoses and fatal drug overdoses in a lot of the local hotels here. So I'm making sure that each and every hotel has naloxone on hand to counteract those overdoses. And if you can get that naloxone administered in a timely manner, it prevents an overdose death. And I partner with EMS, the local coroner, our law enforcement, and the drug unit. And working on ways to counteract the problem that we do have here in Dougherty County. Like I said, right now, we are up to 147 overall overdoses, with 83 of those being opioid overdoses. Last year, 2020, we had 127. So as you can see, we're surpassing the overall number for 2020. And if we keep going to where we're going, because it's increasing monthly, and I can send each of you a copy of this, my slide presentation, and it'll have all the numbers on there for you. But as you can see, if we keep going to where we're going and it is increasing monthly, we are set to double the numbers we had last year. Did anyone have any questions?
Wish I would.
Good morning, Ms. Rhodes. How you doing this morning?
I'm fine.
And thank you for giving us that overview of what's going on in our city. And I do still maintain live contact with some of the first responders, things of that nature. And I will share with this commissioner and those that are listening that this is a huge problem in the city and the county. And Mr. Mayor, like she alluded to earlier, the numbers continue to go up. And these are the numbers that the EMS responders, first responders, that may get to in due time. But based on the numbers that she can confirm that the first responders have said, but I think it's much higher than that. And I will say to this commissioner that it is a problem east, west, north, south, and throughout the city and the county. And let she elaborate that a lot of these extended hotels and motels is where a lot of these individuals are taking place. And as she alluded to the drugs that you can revitalize as Narcan and naloxone, if you can get there within a matter of time, you can revitalize these individuals. But it is a tough situation, and it's going to take education, involvement, collaboration, and connect, because this is what you see, and I elaborate in Albany and Doherty County. During the day, there's a day Albany, and at night, there's a night Albany, and a lot of these naloxone and opioid dependence are taking place in the evening, and it's a concern that if we don't get our hands around it, it's one thing about opioid dependence. It does not discriminate race, creed, sex, or whatever. It is out there, and it can be the demise of this city, and unfortunately, it could be the demise of this country, because it's not every person you see walk on the street. You see a lot of these individuals that is addicted to this stuff in 2- and 3-piece suits and 2- and 3-piece dresses that are addicted to this stuff, and it's a problem, and we need to get our hands wrapped around it ASAP. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for all your efforts in distributing the naloxone, and that certainly is a lifesaver. Anything we can do to help you in getting that distributed in more places around Albany, please let us know. Thank you.
Well, I have reached out to all the commissioners that are located in our target areas, trying to get with them, work with them to see if they would be willing to sit down and we can come up with some areas where they would like to see the Narcan placed. I have the Narcan. It's free of charge. It's available to anyone in the public that wants it. Like I said, on Wednesdays from 1 to 5 p.m. on South Slappy at the Doherty County Health Department. You can just walk in, say, I want some naloxone. There's no questions asked, as long as you're over 18, and we'll distribute that to you. But I would like to, like I said, meet with the commissioners in those target areas. I will send them maps to let them know what's going on in their area. And if there's any place that they can think of where they would like to have the naloxone distributed, I can get it there for them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fletcher.
Excuse me. Well, Ms. Phyllis, that is my area, and please don't use my city email, because I use my personal, and I'll get that to you. And I probably really just want to say something to the chief and Commissioner Howard, Commissioner Warburton, and Commissioner Young. We sat on the public safety, and we've sort of talked about a program that would help put somebody in the car that would be huge and instrumental. I mean, Ms. Phyllis, sometimes when these officers are pulling these people over, they don't have a clue what they're drunk, drugs, mental, etc. And between getting the Narcon and the knowledge and this program implemented that the chief has pushed so very hard for, again, maybe that's something I'd love to sit down and talk with you. And you know, hopefully you've got my cell number I use, and I will send you my email that I do use, because this is the numbers that you know, really the numbers that's reported. I know suicides and overdoses in other parts of the community that happen, and nothing's ever said about it, because sometimes the family just buries what happened. So thank you. It's remarkable work that you've done, the passion that's in you. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Commissioner Warburton?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing, nothing further.
Commissioner Young?
No, ma'am, thank you for the information that you provided. You know, this is a scourge that we've had for some years now. And I thank you for the resources that you're providing to the community, and hopefully we can definitely meet and discuss some ways we can better help you accomplish your mission, because our city does need that. Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Rowley, is that right? Rowley? Roll.
It's rolled.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Roll. I just want to get these numbers for, particularly for Mr. Malden. Hopefully he'll put it in the paper. So in 2019, Doherty County, there were 121 overdoses and 2 deaths. Was that right?
In 2019, there were 121 overall overdoses. That's the opioid numbers. I can send you the regular numbers. I'll send you the information. I can email it to you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll get it to Mr. Malden. But in 2020, you said 278 overdoses. I know that's including the opioid. And how many deaths in 2020?
27.
In 2020, it was 9 fatal opioid deaths, and it was 15 overall. I have them separated out because my program is geared more towards the opioid.
Okay. But in 2020...
But in 2020, it was 278 overall overdoses with 27 deaths.
In Doherty County, in 2020, we had 27 fatal overdoses. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so we're having more people die from overdoses than homicides. Well, if you can get those numbers, and I'll get them, Mr. Malden. I think the public needs to be aware of that. So we appreciate your presentation and the good work you're doing. But you're going to get us those statistics, right?
Yes, sir. I will email those statistics to you, and I do apologize. I was under the impression I was going to be able to share my screen, and that would have made it a little bit more clear.
Well, no, we appreciate you being with us this morning.
Thank you.
You have a good day.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I close with a brief statement, less than 30 seconds?
Okay.
As you were telling that you're going to get the data to Mr. Malden of Albany Herald, and based on what some of the paramedics have told me, the #1 drugs that is out there they're ODing on is what you call fentanyl and carfentanil, and that is a drug, is a tranquilizer that you give to elephants on the to put them to sleep, things of that nature. And I will share this with you. I had some outpatient surgery this year, and when the nurse came to roll me back and was putting it through the IV, and I'm so inquisitive, I said, what are you giving me to put me to sleep? I'm from the old school. I thought it was Demerol, something that they used years ago. But when He said it was fentanyl. I said, fentanyl? So he said, what you know about that? I said, that's a drug of choice in the city and the county of Albany, Georgia. So I did have some experience with fentanyl once they put me to sleep, and I can't imagine why an individual would take that drug, because it knock you out within a matter of 10 seconds.
I hope you threw that mess away.
We have 2 alcohol license applications. Mr. Norman, the first is an application for liquor, beer, and wine consumption. Applicant, Little Whiskey River, Inc., doing business as Whiskey River Lounge at the location of 2900 Sylvester Road.
All right. Good morning. Yes, Little Whiskey River Incorporation, doing business as Little Whiskey River Lounge at 2900 Sylvester Road, has submitted an application requesting a transfer of the full consumption. Dana M. Hart at 7761 Georgia Highway 133 in Doran, Georgia, and Dustin Hart, 103 Doris Street, Sylvester, Georgia, in Doherty County. There's no local agent necessary. The type of business is a bar and lounge. The planning department identifies this location zone in C3 on an arterial street and in Ward 1. There is no distance requirement for transfer. However, the nearest school is Turner Elementary at 2001 Leonard Drive at 5,000 feet. The nearest church is St. Paul Baptist Church at 2605 Sylvester Road at 1,900 plus feet. This establishment was previously licensed as Little Whiskey River from 2011 to 2021. The police department has no open investigations at this location. The police calls over the past 12 months was one miscellaneous. The applicant placed an article in the Albany Herald at least 10 days prior to this meeting as notification that the general public that the application would be considered for approval. The applicant and the location meets the criteria for approval.
Thank you, Mark Norman. Any questions? Mr. Howard.
Mr. Norman, let me ask you a question. You said there's no requirement to have a local address, right?
There's no requirement for
A transfer?
Right, for the distance requirements from schools and churches.
So is there a requirement from school to churches?
There's no requirement for a transfer.
Okay, because I was wondering, there's a church. This sits on the fringe of the city and the county. There was a church out there in the county. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions.
Mr. Fletcher.
No questions.
Commissioner Warmington.
No questions.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No questions.
Commissioner Young.
No questions.
The next item is a application for a beer and wine package license. Applicant Sri Dine Investment, Inc., doing business as Save Right. The location is 427 South Westover Boulevard. Can you tell us about this?
Yes, sir. Before I get started, on the agenda, it has it listed in Ward 5, but on the application, it is listed in Ward 4, so it does have the correct ward listed. Sri Dine Investments Incorporation, doing business as Save Right at 427 Westover Road, has submitted an application for a transfer of packaged beer and wine. The applicant is Dashandra Bharat at 3 Aberdeen Circle, Cordell, Georgia. The local agent is Bianca Porter at 811 West Gordon Avenue here in Albany. The type of business is convenience store. The planning department identified this location zone in C3 on an arterial street and in Ward 4. There is no distance requirement on a transfer. However, the nearest school is Westover High School at 2600 Partridge Drive, over 5,000 feet, and the nearest church is Alive City at 2804 Phillips Drive, over 1,000 feet. This establishment was previously licensed as Save Right from 2009 to 2021. The police department has no open investigation at this location. Police calls for over the past 12 months are 3 persons crimes. The applicant placed an article in the Albany Herald 10 days prior to this meeting as notification to the general public that this application would be considered for approval. the applicant and location meet the criteria for approval.
Any questions, Marshal Norman? Commissioner Howard?
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No questions.
Commissioner Worthington?
Just one quick question. So how do you handle if the owner that's listed doesn't match the owner that's listed on the tax record?
Well, in this particular, there should be, Mr. Barat Ahmed is the new purchaser of the building and is leased to Dashandra. So as far as them completing their contract with the old owner of the property, I'm not familiar with that yet. But there is a lease is issued to Dashandra.
Okay. Well, if you could just follow up, I don't know how long it takes from a closing to update, to the tax record, but maybe if you could see what their closing date was or when he or she is the actual owner. If they've had a closing, that would be good.
Yes, sir. But I do have an active lease for the applicant.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I will
That's
look
it.
into that.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No question.
Commissioner Young?
No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
The next item on the agenda is a consideration of the installation of speed tables on the 800 block of Lipid Drive. Mr. Maples, Mr. Breedlove.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, everybody. Yeah, the engineering department was notified of speeding in the 800 block of Lipid Drive. We did the study. The 85th percentile came up at 42 miles per hour. This met the speeding threshold for consideration of speed tables. The petition was submitted and it garnered more than required 60% of the signatures. The traffic calming policy states in section 1.2 that speed tables will only be considered on streets classified as local residential streets with a posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. However, on November 24, 2020, the City Commission modified the traffic calming policies that gave the City Commission the right to approve installation on collector streets. The cost estimate for the installation of 4 speed tables is approximately $30,000. The funding would come from T-Splosh, and it's up for the discretion of the City Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Maples. Mr. Breedlove, have anything to add?
No, sir.
Okay. Any questions, Commissioner Howard?
Bruce, good morning. How you do?
Good morning.
Can you give me a hard copy of what you gave me last week when you sent it to the
Yes,
email? Can I get a hard copy of that? What you said that if a area does not meet the threshold, that the commissioner, just could override it.
Yes, sir. I'll get you a hard copy.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions.
Mr. Fletcher?
Well, I do want to say what, this is my area, and it was fast-tracked, and the reason it was made possible was fantastic neighborhood that got out and did what they were supposed to do with the signatures. I want to personally thank Principal Polite that signed for the entire school, because it's getting very dangerous over there, and Ken Dyer fast-tracking a letter to the engineers. It seemed like all of this worked together, and I do want to ask the commission, to really consider this, because we do not want the call that anyone, those cars are, it's just amazing how fast they go from stop sign to stop sign. So engineering, thank you to the people out here for listening. This was a community effort, and it looks like it could pan out. And also, I'm going to tell you, I'm working on an area with Chief Pursley and Dr. David Miles that we're trying to do the same thing too. And we've got to take these areas very serious. So thank you, and thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to say that.
Commissioner Worthington?
Yeah, just a quick question, Mr. Maple. So it looks like the 800 block, it's just a 1 or 2 block area across from the high school. is that where the speed tables are going, or is it gonna go from Newton Road all the way to Slappy?
It'll just be in the 800 block area. It's where we requested to do the study.
Okay, so it doesn't span the whole block, or the whole from Newton Road to Slappy? It's just, looks like it's right where the parking lot is for the high school is basically where the general area will be.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. That's it, Mayor.
Mr. Langstaff?
No questions.
Mr. Young?
Just thank you, Mr. Maples, for doing this. Is also out my ward borders with this particular area, splits right down Lipid Drive, and I was always very aware of the speeding problem during school hours, and when the kids are getting out right there in front of the high school, because my daughter went to Monroe. So that was something that was definitely needed. I would like to kind of figure out what I guess kind of how we're doing this in terms of this, I guess, fast tracking or what have you, because I do know that, of course, we still only have one area in my ward that's other than this one is that does have speed tables. So I'm sure, people are going to hear that and want to also be fast-tracked. I have quite a few, streets that want that. So I hope we can actually get a process where we can just kind of make a decision and not leave it on citizens to have to, gather these signatures, because if it truly is a public safety issue, then that responsibility becomes ours, and as well as our public safety officers. So we need to weigh in on that to just see if these things are something that needs to be put out after we've researched that there's a problem, without necessarily having to, like I said, go back and have the citizens kind of have to figure out how to jump through the hoops to get these signatures, especially with the numbers of police that we have available to do traffic patrols. So definitely want to keep that on the table, adjusting this policy some more so we can take care of these, what is a public safety issue, and take it out of the realm of just having citizens have to decide whether or not they want these, but we can put them where they need to be. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. Next item on the agenda, it looks like it's a requirement to update the comprehensive plan. Is that correct, Mr. Voorhees?
Yes, sir. This agenda item is a request for the City Commission to approve the submittal of the 2016-2020 Report of Accomplishments and the Community Work Program for 2021 to 2026 of the 2016 Albany-Doherty Comprehensive Plan. Submit this to the Department of Community Affairs and the Southwest Georgia Regional Commission for the required review. Once it's approved by DCA, the Community Work Program will need to be adopted by the city prior to the deadline of October 31st, 2021. Each government in Georgia is required to complete a 5-year update to their comprehensive plans. The City of Albany, in conjunction with Doherty County, last completed a full plan update in 2016. City and county staff have been working with the Regional Commission to develop the Report of Accomplishments and the Community Work Program, and according to state rules, this must be adopted by both governments prior to October 31st. So in your information that was sent out, the main thing that we've done in the past is an update of the Community Work Program. That's a 5-year program of implementation strategies to implement items from your comprehensive plan. And we also have to submit a report of accomplishments which describes the activities that we've undertaken over the last 5 years to achieve the things in the previous Community Work Program. In addition, We also have to update our goals, and you'll see an updated section for that in your handout, needs and opportunities, excuse me. And also, there's a new requirement that was created by the state in 2018 for the inclusion of a broadband element. So that's a new requirement for the comprehensive plan. That's a new section. We wrote a very brief broadband element looking at what other governments have done with guidance from the Regional Commission. So those 4 items, the report of accomplishments, the community work program, the broadband element, and the updated needs and opportunities are the things that need to be reviewed and then submitted to the state for their review. There will be another public hearing. We've already had one. There'll be another public hearing in this room next Monday at 5:30. That's August 23rd. The city will then have the opportunity to vote on this the next day, August 24th. The county will vote on it August 30th, and then that all will be transmitted to the state for review and come back for your consideration to adopt by the end of October, if you have any questions.
Mr. Howard.
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions.
Ms. Fletcher.
No questions.
Ms. Warmington.
No questions.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No question.
Commissioner Young.
No question.
Thank you for your work, Mr. Gordon.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda is consideration of the purchase of, it says heavy-duty lift, Sterile Coney. Mr. Bednar, are you with us? Ms. Fields?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning.
Good morning. The item for consideration is a purchase of some lifts for fleet. It's replacing some very old lifts that they have, and for safety purposes, it's recommended to buy these new ones. The amount is $47,559.83.
Okay. Any questions? Ms. Howard?
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions.
Mr. Fletcher.
No questions.
Commissioner Warmington.
No questions.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No question.
Commissioner Young.
No question.
What helped me in this next item, we had a picture of the piece of equipment we're purchasing, and it just, I would have thought something that could lift a bus would cost more than this, but if I don't really understand what this machine is and does.
We're going to let Mr. Bednar
Mr.
tell you
Bednar?
all about that.
Yes, Mayor, what this does is, this is a vehicle lift, but instead of your traditional structured lifts, these are portable lifts. So you would roll 4 units to each tire, and then they're synchronized to lift a fire truck or lift a school bus up by grasping onto the wheels and lifting all 4 wheels at the same time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bednar, for that explanation. The next item on the agenda is consideration of a recommendation from the Utility Board to purchase professional services and equipment from Synchronet, Inc. Mr. Dawson?
Good morning,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. This purchase is for professional services and equipment from Synchronet, Inc., as you said, sir. This will include materials to include but not be limited to equipment racks, cable management, 728 surge units, 120 volt receptacles, cabling, tubing, and vinyl ring terminals, This purchase will also have a component for professional services to include project management, installation, to entail lab staging, provisioning, and testing. Synchronet also holds maintenance and management agreements on noted telecom equipment and is one of telecom's internet service providers. Staff recommend this, and also this purchase is in conjunction for the relocation process at 211 North Jefferson, which is the Pace Building, and also for the removal of abandoned equipment and materials not transferred from 207 Pine. Staff recommends to approve Utility Board's recommendation and to have this item on the August 24th agenda for decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dawson, you have anything to add?
No, sir. Good morning. I'm just here to answer any additional questions you may have about the proposal.
Any questions for the presenters? Commissioner Howard?
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions.
Mr. Fletcher?
No questions.
Mr. Warmington?
Just want to note, I mean, this is one of the most important infrastructure parts of our telecom, if not, it is the telecom business. So,
yes, sir.
I mean, y'all feel comfortable with this contractor and the plans they got placed to keep our downtime minimal and effects to customers minimal?
We do. They're actually going to lab our equipment, which means they're going to basically do a replica and test on site. So when they bring it here, there won't be any surprises. So it'll be minimal downtime. This is a trusted partner who's done engineering work for us in the past. So we're very confident in this proposal.
Okay. Will there be like 12 hours of downtime, or what kind of downtime would customers need to expect?
Probably looking at about, our maintenance window is usually from 12 o'clock a.m. to 6 a.m., so 6 hours.
Okay. And I guess that'll be communicated. I mean, I know most businesses might be closed during that time, but it could create a problem for some businesses that use our telecom.
Yes, sir. We have a standard process. Anytime there's maintenance, we advise our customers at least 72 hours in advance of any potential downtime. But with something like this, we'd reach out at least a week in advance so they can prepare for any downtime.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's it, Mayor.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No question.
Commissioner Young?
No question.
Ms. Dawson, this is sort of what they call a single source. Is that right?
Yes, sir. We did reach out to competing vendors, but they were not able to provide a complete quote. Those two were actually Gray Bar and Grisco. So we did reach out to additional vendors.
I mean, my just concern is, I mean, I understand these companies have proprietary equipment and policies, but you know, we get too embedded with a company and then we can't extricate ourselves from, you know.
Yes, sir.
That's just, but we appreciate your presentation, Mr. Williams, Mr. Dawson. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is consideration of a recommendation to purchase a tractor with boom for the Public Works Department from Flint Equipment Company here in Albany at a cost of $172,599.52. Mr. Bednar, Ms. Fields, Mr. Rowe, who will be speaking on this item.
As you indicated, there is a nice pretty picture of this one included in the package. This item is available for, is in stock and available for immediate delivery. The department is in need, and we would like to surplus the other 2 units, which are the tractor and the attachment. Purchase would be $172,599.52.
Okay. Mr. Bednar, anything to add?
No, sir, it's just one of those pieces of equipment. It's very unique to Public Works, and we only have one of them in the whole fleet, and it's a critical piece for them.
Mr. Rowe, anything you want to add?
No, sir, just here to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for any of the presenters? Commissioner Howard?
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No questions.
Commissioner Warmington?
Yeah, just a quick question to Mr. Rowe. So is this the piece of equipment that it's always in the shop, we're always having to borrow from the county, that delays a lot of our
Yes, sir.
citizens?
Yes, sir. This is the piece of equipment we've been waiting on for several months, that we mow around holding ponds, ditches. We use it to cut back overgrowth in alleys. It's a highly utilized piece of equipment. It's been down, so we're excited about hopefully getting this back in our fleet.
So this ought to expedite a lot of our citizen requests that we're getting for ditches, canals, lakes, as you said.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, thanks. That's it, Mayor.
Commissioner Langstaff.
Nothing further.
Commissioner Young.
Yes, sir. Mr. Rose, is this part of, I guess this purchase would be part of, I guess the stormwater maintenance, since we're gonna be using it for, like you said, cleaning out ditches and canals?
Well, it just mows around. It's actually for vegetation maintenance, the right-of-way maintenance, because we use it for several different applications.
Okay, and that's kind of just shared through all of those particular applications through Public Works?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and do we have a specific stormwater kind of crew or department, sub-department?
Well, throughout Public Works, we have people to perform stormwater functions. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Bednar, Mr. Rowe, whoever, just, I guess the value of the unit that's going to be surplused is negligible, is that right?
Yeah, I think the best, I think we're projecting maybe 3,500.
How do you sell that? You put it on the internet, or is there some site?
We, throughout the city, all of our surplus, it goes on, I believe it's Gov Deals, and it's auctioned off.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. And Ms. Fields. It's, next item on the agenda is, do you have something to say?
Yeah, on the next item. I'm just waiting on you.
Is this the transit procurement policy?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right, can I ask you to have a seat, Ms. Fields?
Sure.
Mr. Wright has signed up to speak. Unless you want to stand up. Well. Good morning, Mr. Wright.
Greetings to you all. What we have here, this will address some of the issues. You have the handout. What you have before you is this letter to the mayor is about 4 years old. You know, that's the first thing that's wrong with it. And the other things are here in the presentation to you. Do you know that everything in there that you are proposing to do is already federal law? So what I'm telling you is you are not updating it. What you're doing is you're just reaffirming what the law requires. And it's called rope-a-dope. Pretend you're doing something when the law already is there for that. Let me give you an example. On Friday, August the 27th, approximately 9 a.m. of this year, we're going to meet here at the Government Center and celebrate the 58th anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington. The March on Washington created the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So it was a precursor. 500,000 people from all over the United States and some from over the world came to protest for discrimination that's outlined in the document before you. Now, it is still there, but for your information, as on this handout, the 1964 Civil Rights Act is parallel with the Voting Rights Act. Now, did you know that there are 11 titles to the 1964 Civil Rights Act? and the city of Albany has violated 9 of them between Framtech and Conseco and your presenter. You notice it highlights non-discrimination. It highlights the 9 areas of non-discrimination. We came to you on July 20th and told you that you could not discriminate against anyone because of those legacy issues that's in this document. It addresses the point that Mr. Lucas was trying to make every year since Department of Transportation was created. See, DOT just was developed or created by Congress in 1967. The city of Albany has been participating, receiving these dollars that you're pretending you're updating since around 1974. The city of Albany has received $600 million through this program. You know how much money African Americans have got? I went back and checked the record. Between the 45 years, between 1974 and now, there has not been a single black-owned business that got $1 million contract. Yet, every year, when Mr. Lucas was making this point, every year the city of Albany gets $20 million or more through the 5303 fund, 5307, 5309, and 5311. What I'm telling you, Mayor and Commissioners, what you're doing is you're just reaffirming what the law has in there, and it's 4 years delayed. You should have been doing this all the time. You were required by federal law to do it. You were required not to discriminate against anyone. Let me give you an example. You had 2 Anglo-Saxons that come up here and say it was a good deal for you to spend $20 million to give Eagles of America, build them a 50,000 square foot building, let us pay for it, and he hauled $10 million to Moultrie every year.
1 minute.
So,
that's right.
Again, you do not follow the 1964 Civil Rights. The city of Albany just make its own laws. You ignored everything. But between now and August 27th, you're going to get notified about this in the federal court. Now, you continue to do what you want to do, but it's already set. We're going to discuss that on August 27th at 9 o'clock. We're going to have a rally celebrating the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington that led to the creation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act that prohibits discrimination in 9 areas, and the city of Albany has been violating all of them systematically and indifferent. We receive $20 million a year.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
And do not get any return on it.
Thank you, Mr.
See if there are any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Howard.
Mr. Wright, did you say August 27, 2021?
Right.
At 9 o'clock?
Right outside in King Arthur's Court, we're going to have a rally to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, because that's what the march was about. It was not about all these other things about gays and lesbians and all that. That was not in there. That senator from over there in West Virginia, he was the one that put that in there. I think his name was Senator Robert Byrd. He put all that mess in there about gender and sex, but it was not in there before President Kennedy was assassinated. So we're going to celebrate here, and we're going to talk about the legal action with the city of Albany and DOT, et cetera. We're going to give you a highlight of all that.
So it's going to be there Friday morning?
Friday morning, August 27th, King Arthur's Court at 9 o'clock. Now, one other thing, Mayor, as a point of order, there are no sign-up sheets. I was getting ready to do something, I got a phone call, and I left mine at the office, so I need it because I want to speak to this master plan update. I think it began on page 206 about the master plan. There's no sign-up sheet out there. So I want to speak to that. But yes, that's what it'd be, 9 o'clock.
Okay. Okay. All right.
No other question?
You know what? We're going around that. Okay, I see what you're saying now. Okay. All right. We'll make that correction. Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Well, nothing really for Mr. Wright, but he said something, and I think probably Ms. Fields or either the city manager, Stephen Carter, can answer this, but I would like to maybe look and see, when you say that not one African-American received $1 million contract, I can't help but to think about Harry James, Glenn Singfield, that's the owner of Artesian, Senator Winfred Dukes. So I would like to know if, I'd sort of like to follow that because those names come to my mind and I just like to have facts. It sort of makes me do things a little better.
As a point of order and correction, Commissioner Fletcher, if you wait a minute, I wanted to clear something up when she raised the $1 million. Let me be clear about that. What your presenter indicated was not from the time 1974 to now, there's not been a single African-American owned business to get $1 million. I'm qualifying this to United States DOT funding, the funds that we pay when we go to the gas station. Every time you go to a gas station, 50% of that dollar go to fund DOT projects. Most people do not know that. So the $20 million we get every year is just a return on our investment. And the instant case before you, between 1974 when we started participating and now, there's not been one from that funding sources. The other $200 or $300 million we'll qualify later, but I want you to understand that when the city manager checked that, we're not talking about the other funding, we're talking about DOT specific, the 5303, 5307, 5309, 5711.
So you're saying, because
discrimination is the reason it hadn't happened.
So you're not saying that they've never received, and others, you're saying just nobody from the DOT
no, ma'am.
funds received it?
What I'm saying is no business that should receive the money if we had not been discriminated and following 49 CFR 26 has received one. I have the data. When we get to court, it's going to be shown.
Well, and I'm just sort of asking.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Mr. Warmington?
Yeah, Mr. Wright, so are you for this policy that's in front of us right here?
Well, Commissioner Washington, you don't have to. It's already law. See, people don't understand there's a difference in
But
law.
Mr. Wright, we're considering this policy for us to vote on it. So
no,
is this
policy?
Wait,
okay. All right.
No, I mean, let's just not talk over each other.
No, I'm just trying to understand, are you encouraging us to vote for this policy or to turn it, or to vote no against it?
No, so what I'm saying is you don't have to do that. It was already law when DOT sent you that letter. You were supposed to be doing it anyway. So you just reaffirming it. Yes, I'm for you reaffirming it, but that doesn't change the fact you're required to do it by law anyway. In other words, you were not following the law. They wouldn't just send it to you, just be sending it to you. That was in 2018. That's almost 4 years later, and you're going to go and something out. You're going to follow something 4 years later. The law already required you to do it, Commissioner Ward. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks, Mr. Wright.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No question.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your presentation this morning, Mr. Wright. Can you, I guess, maybe suggest some of the updates that you would like to see since you made the point that this is already federal law?
Right.
What could we be doing differently?
Well, one of the things that we suggested, we sent a 60-page packet to everyone from the White House. We sent it to the House Speaker. We sent it to the Majority Whip, the Minority Whip. We sent it to Congressman Bishop. We sent it to Senator Warnock. We sent it to Senator Ossoff and Congressman Bishop. The problem with it now is DOT has 100,000 employees. And just like in everything else, half of them are clueless. They don't know what they're doing, and then they do a poor job of doing it. So what you need to have, the first thing that we suggested, we sent a 60-page document to the President of the United States, the Vice President, and the other people that I've named. I think that was almost 30 altogether. And we sent a packet to Mr. Hamilton, so he should have that. We sent it to the intermodal and everyone. But what you have to do is understand the problem. We pointed out the problem in that 6-page document, told them how the city of Albany was discriminating, and there are 4,000 or so airports. They were discriminating, and there are probably 20,000 transit systems. They are discriminating. The reason these 100,000 employees, half of them are clueless, and the ones who do know are indifferent. But the first thing that needs to be done that would have corrected this is have circuit riders. What I mean by that is we call 15 different members of FAA, FTA, and FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration. All three of these require the same thing. That's what you don't understand. See, the reason they fail is there's no enforcement. The first thing is you need circuit riders who understand the law. They need to go around and do random checks. If they would come here as they should have been, we wouldn't have had to send that 60-page document outlining these problems. You need circuit riders who understand what 49 CFR 26 is and to do their job. We're not asking them to do anything they're not paid for. But if someone files a complaint, we should not have to go to Los Angeles because that's what the FAA has set up. If you had a complaint about what your government was doing with the federal funds for DOT, you had to call somebody in LA, and that's 3 hours difference in time. We did some calling there. That did not work. So what I'm saying is the first thing you got to have is circuit riders who understand the law and have the ability to put a claim in and say, hey, you need to go and check Albany Transit. Hey, you need to go and check the Southwest Georgia Regional Airport. You need to go and check the airport in motion. That's the first thing you need to have to do. You need to have circuit riders. The other thing is you need to have, see, the law requires that in the Fifth Amendment, you have to have somewhere for due process of law. What that means is if there's a disagreement between a Framtech and the city of Albany, there needs to be some intervener in a panel who did not have anything to do with the issue at hand. In other words, you have to have micro-justice at every level. See, that right now, the way it's set up, the only thing you can do is you have to take the city to court. And that's what we did. Okay. See, you have to take them to court. You cannot go to an appeal or ADR or something like that. That creates time and just further exacerbate the discrimination that's already there. We know discrimination is systemic, but if you look back when the 49 CFR was 26, you know how it got changed from 49 CFR 26 and 23? Good. Anglo-Saxon women claimed that they were disadvantaged. That's how white women got in there. Okay. They didn't just get in there to get in there. They wanted to take the money.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir. I think we need to probably, get together to see if we can, hammer out some more of those suggestions and see what we can do to update this, because of course this is, again, another one of the things that myself and Commissioner Howard have been lobbying for and talking about is, making sure we're doing everything we can to, make sure that we're not only complying with federal law, but to give African-American businesses a shot at being prosperous. And that doesn't just come from saying, okay, we looked for some and we couldn't find some, but we're also putting in some measures to make sure they can qualify for these contracts and be a part of these contracts when they come down. One of the things I'm very aware of is the example that Maynard Jackson set back in the 70s, utilizing transportation funds when they built Atlanta Hartsfield Airport. He was very instrumental at getting black mason workers part of that contract, which really led to the development and the building of the African-American wealth class that you see in Atlanta now. If we're ever going to see some more development like that here in Albany, we have to take these opportunities to utilize those areas, because we don't have, private investment. We don't have the banks putting a whole lot of money into these areas. And when we have federal dollars, we can, utilize those federal dollars to, pump some investment into those communities as well. So I think that's what we need to be working on. I think that's what Mr. Wright is saying, and I really want us to push forward with doing that. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Thank you.
We were gonna take a break at 11:30. Was I wrong about that?
Yeah, that's right.
10:30.
No,
Oh, it's 10:30.
yeah. Well, actually, we could take a break at 11:15 if you want to move it up.
Okay, well, no, we might get down. Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. Ms. Fields, did Ms. Fields leave? Oh, there, okay. Ms. Hamilton,
You just can't see her.
Okay. What you have before you is an update of the transit procurement policy, which was adopted. The original policy was adopted by the commission in 2018, which is why we included that resolution that had the mayor's signature on it, Mayor Hubbard. We received a updated policy from GDOT, and it had quite a bit more in it than our previous policy did. So Ms. Strassenberg in our office went through every page and made the changes that needed to be made to update the policy, and you have a copy of that in your package of everything that was and everything that now is. And we're asking for you to adopt a policy so that we can be in compliance.
thank you, Ms. Fields. Ms. Hamilton, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would like to add that the policy itself that was adopted in 2018 was not specific to Albany Transit. The policy was adopted by all transit agencies, so it's not just specific to Albany.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Fields and or Mr. Hamilton? Commissioner Howard?
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No questions.
Commissioner Warmington?
No questions.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No questions.
Commissioner Young?
No questions.
Any discussion? Ms. Howard?
No discussion. We'll be voting
Pro Tem.
next week.
No discussion.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No discussion.
Commissioner Warmington?
No discussion.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Young?
No discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. The next item on the agenda is an update on the downtown master plan. We have a problem. Lord Ekin Taylor has gone bankrupt. Hold on, Ms. Gass. What, Ms. Wright, did you say you want to speak on this?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ms. Gaskin.
I apologize to the mayor, because I got to go and do a television show in a couple of minutes.
You got to go where?
I had to go and do a television presentation, and we're going to be talking about this 49 CFR 26 and 23 and the millions of dollars that flow through. There are 80,000 local governments, and a large part of them have these transportation funds. People do not realize that, so we're going to do a television show at 11. But what I want to tell you about this, and I'll be brief because, as I said, I got to go. I have already committed to doing that. The problem with this is...
We wouldn't want to hold you up.
Yeah, I bet you would not. And I'll just leave anyway, so you'll feel happy. But what I wanted to bring to your attention is simply this. There have been about 10 or 12 master plans. And I went back and checked all of them. The best one was done in 1996. We paid Peter Dry $1 million. And I went back and looked at the other 11, and they're just as worthless almost as Peter Dry. Now, Peter Dry, Commissioner Howard, you may remember, there was a black guy came here and had those dreads with Peter Dry. And because he didn't have no black business, we got on them about that. Don't you come down here in a community like ours and think we're going to give you $1 million, nobody black making the money. What Peter Dry did, he took 400 properties downtown, and he detailed what each one should be if we were ever to change. See, I've been a classroom teacher for 35 years in 7 or 8 different areas, but business is one that I specialize in. Nothing is going to change in this community. You saw we lost 12,000 citizens. Why do you want to blow $125,000 and you hadn't changed any of the essential elements of economic development? You got to put up something like a Costco or some anchor tenant down here. You know why? Because if you look around, where the government center is now was supposed to be an 18-story building. I served as 30 years as the president of NAACP, and I went all over the United States. And what I would do, unlike some people, they would take a vacation, and a lot of you do that when you pretend you're going on a meeting. I know that, and you know it. But I would go. I remember one time I went to Seattle and Tacoma, Washington. So I said, let me go and see what these people are doing, water, gas, and light in Seattle. You know, Seattle power was only 0.5 cent a kilowatt. And we were around 9 or 10 cents then. And I was a commissioner at one time for 4 years and changed some of the policy. As a matter of fact, we hired the first black person to be the city attorney for water, gas, and light, and bought the first black general manager for water, gas, and light in 1996. But I went to Seattle City Power. I think they call it Seattle City Lights. It was an 80-story complex, and it was a private-owned business. It was not the government. See, what's wrong here is we got it backwards. So all you're doing is blowing money because Walt Disney, P.T. Barnum, and other experts have said the only way things are going to change is you got to change the dynamic. What that means is you're surrounded with the government center. The government center was supposed to be where the federal court is now. The 18-story building was supposed to be here, and there's supposed to have been private retail around us. We had people who were clueless to what they were doing then, just like we do now. But you got to have something to change that would draw people here. Nobody's going to come here just to come downtown. You're surrounded by boutiques on the exterior. So and the only way you can do it, when Mayor Gray decided he bought everything in here. Every building in this block, he bought it. And then would not let you develop unless you paid Gray Real Estate a ton of money. So that's what messed things up in the first place. We had a despot who decided to come in and do that. He did it. But you would have to tear all those buildings down and restructure it. $250 million, something like that. So you're blowing money because nothing has changed. You lost 12,000 people between the city and the county, as we told you before. And you think just because Eric or whoever the heck you're giving the money to come here and say things are beautiful and you know it's otherwise, it's crazy. You got to change the dynamic. You got to have an anchor tenant, and you got to deal with all those businesses that are on exterior. See, what P.T. Barnum and Walt Disney discovered was, just like when I teach students business class 101.
30 seconds, Mr. Wright.
What it said, the reason businesses fail, 80% fail because they're undercapitalized, meaning they don't have any money. They don't have any management that's worth anything. And they are clueless, and they don't know the difference between a business and a hobby. And that's what you have surrounding all these boutiques. Somebody barbecue in the home, then he or she think they can go out here and barbecue the same way, and they operate in a hobby.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Well, you got to think about that. Blow another $125,000, you have not changed anything, and you want to do this, and you're going to find out that 50% of people who are in government everywhere, just like Walt Disney said and P.T. Barnum, they are clueless. So you cannot change anything unless you change the dynamic. Come to one of my classes, and then you can learn.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wright. Ms. Gaskins?
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. Certainly a pleasure to be here amongst you today. As you guys remember, earlier this year, we actually presented to you 10 proposals that were submitted in response to the request for proposal for the Downtown Master Plan. The PAG included myself, Planning and Development Director Paul Porgy, Assistant Finance Director Michael Eaton, DDA Utility Board Stan Logue, and the Albany Housing Authority Director and the Vice Chair for the Attica Board, Dr. William Miles. We actually ranked the 10 proposals, and we provided to you the top 3. You guys actually went through those and you chose Lord Aiken and Sargent. Since they were selected as the chosen consultant, we found out that they've actually filed for bankruptcy. According to Attorney Davis, because they have filed bankruptcy, the entity is currently not the same entity that was chosen. So we're coming before you to see if you want us to pursue a relationship with Lord Aiken and Sargent, and if we do, according to Mr. Davis, we're going to have to rebid that process. The next top 2 consultants were TSW out of Atlanta, Georgia, and Design Workshops from Raleigh, North Carolina. So we're coming for you today, hopefully to get your support in moving forward with another consultant, or giving us permission to at least pursue something with Lord Aiken and Sargent so that we can get the downtown master plan moving forward.
Okay. For clarification, Ms. Gaskins, you just said working with Lord Aiken Taylor. As my understanding from what Mr. Davis said is the whole project has to be rebid. Is that what we're saying, Mr. Davis? So we understand what our options are here?
Yes, sir, that's an accurate statement. There was a Chapter 11 proceeding, and the assets and everything are now owned by a new company. Thank you.
Okay. So, I mean, it's, maybe I misinterpreted what Ms. Gaskins said, but it seemed like pursuing with, we could just go back to Lord Aiken Taylor. That's not an option.
That's correct.
The options are to totally rebid. Sir?
I don't know if they're keeping that name or they even have a new name. But
You know, they say they have the new name in the paperwork. They say they have the same name in the paperwork. So the options are to totally rebid the project.
Right.
Or to evaluate the proposals of the other 2 firms which were in the top 3.
That is correct. If we stay with Lord Aiken and Sargent, then that means we have to go back and rebid
Okay.
and start
All right.
over.
Okay.
That is correct.
So we understand that. Ms. Fields, you have anything to add?
No, you got it clarified.
Okay. Commissioner Howard, any questions for Ms. Gaskins?
Ms. Gaskins, I know I asked you an impromptu question, but when they made the proposal several weeks ago, did you have an idea that it was going to file for bankruptcy? They didn't let you know?
Absolutely not. We actually found out they had filed bankruptcy when we went to pursue the contract for them to move the project forward. So no, sir, we did not know that they were in any proceedings for bankruptcy at all.
And so is there a rush that we rush into to try to get the master plan completed, or what?
I would love to get the master plan completed. We started this process back, actually the request for proposal came out December 2020. And of course, we reviewed the pack, got together in March of 2021. I'm very interested in moving the master plan forward so that we can actually identify and execute some of those projects we've been talking about for downtown development. It takes quite a few months to start the process over. So I think if we did that, we push ourselves to the latter part of this year if we decide to utilize that as our option.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be in concert with the city attorney said that we put it back on the streets for advertising for the master plan for downtown. That's it.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Gaskins? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, ma'am. Have we paid Lord Aiken Sargent anything yet?
Commissioner Fuller, we have not paid any consultants at this point, no, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Well, thank God we haven't paid them anything. I like to pay a completion of the job for the taxpayers' sake, but I think one reason, and you're right, Commissioner Howard, we do need to get this back on the streets because every day we see materials climbing. So it's huge that we get these master plans and these projects implemented so we could at least know what direction these people are going in and that we're going in. Thank y'all for bringing this to our attention.
Commissioner Warmington.
Yeah, just one question. So we could choose number 2.
Right.
So what would be the benefit of bidding it versus going and choose number 2? Would we
Actually,
get new?
staff's recommendation would be to choose 2 or 3. There were 10 proposals, and all of the proposals were great proposals. The organizations were outstanding. That was one of the things, one of the comments that the PAG even made is that we got some really great consultants. Any of the 10 consultants could do a great job. My staff recommendation would be to choose out of the top 3, and we have 2 and 3 that we presented to you in terms of, and the point system, and Commissioner Warburton, I remember you mentioning there was not a huge difference in terms of which ones were 1, 2, and 3. So staff recommendation would be choose out of those top 3.
And didn't we have a special commission meeting where we interviewed?
You did.
Yeah.
You did. You actually, the commission, the mayor and commission actually interviewed the top 3. So you've had an opportunity to speak with them. And they know exactly what's going on within the downtown. They've been keeping up with what's happening. So I think that we will find a great product if we decide that we're going to move with either of the top 3.
So one request I have is maybe if we could find those minutes, or I don't know if every conversation was documented in the interview.
Yes.
Is maybe somehow encapsulate that so we can kind of refresh our memory of what was said or what have you.
Yes.
But my recommendation would be to consider number 2 and number 3 and not to rebid the whole thing again. Maybe refresh our memory of what we've already done, the time we spent interviewing, and choose from number 2 and number 3.
We can certainly do that.
Would be
That
my
was-
recommendation.
That was March of 2021. I would also say, as a part of the recommendation, whenever you look at those the remaining 2, that you actually rank those. So if we reach out to the top, the second candidate, if they're not available, you give us permission to go to the next consultant versus coming back here to ask you for your permission again.
Okay, all right. That's it, Mayor.
Commissioner Langstaff.
My understanding is that we already awarded the contract to this company, right? And then they filed bankruptcy after we awarded it. Is that correct?
We awarded it, but we had not executed any documentation. Whenever Procurement contacted Lori Aiken and Sargent to actually execute the documentation, they shared with us that they were in the process of actually going through the bankruptcy proceedings. So the commission actually gave us...
Here's my concern, is that generally in Chapter 11, the purpose of it is to allow the company to continue in existence. It's not a sale of assets, it's a reorganization. And my understanding is that the provisions that would allow you to get out of a contract because of a bankruptcy filing are void as against public policy. The Chapter 11 debtor can get out of a contract if they want to, but it's not the other way around, because the bankruptcy law favors the debtor. I'm not an expert in bankruptcy, but I guess what my concern is I don't want to rebid the thing or award it to somebody else and then find out that person that, we didn't sign the contract with them, but we were going to. I guess we voted to do so. I don't want them to sue us or make a claim that we can't, get out of our award of the bid. So towards that end, I guess what I'd ask is Nathan consult a bankruptcy specialist. There may be one locally that he can consult on Chapter 11, just to make sure that we have all these options. It seems odd to me that we would have the option to get out of it or rebid it like that. Anyway, those are my comments.
Okay. Commissioner Young? Commissioner Young? I just...
No comment.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Young. I think, Commissioner Langstaff, if you look in the presentation, a lot of these firms were being absorbed by national firms. And this Lord Aiken, Sargent, they apparently have bought out, the architectural firm have bought out of the bankruptcy. So they're not any longer affiliated with the corporation that we awarded the contract to, even though we have the same individuals who made the presentation and would have performed the contract. But if you want to If you want Mr. Davis to get somebody to confirm that, would that be all right, Mr. Davis?
Yes, sir, I'll be glad to do so.
Yeah.
There, I saw it either a letter or an email from Lord Ekin Sargent offering the city the option, in effect, of staying with them or going somewhere else. They said they'd understand any decision the city made. They even mentioned one of the principals in the company apparently was a major part of the analysis by Ms. Gaskins and the PAG. That person has left the company, and again, they include in there, I admire their ethics in doing it, that person's no longer there. And if the city didn't want to continue with them, that was fine.
With that, Commissioner Langstaff, you still want the opinion?
Yeah, I do, just to be safe. I mean, how much money are we talking about?
Okay.
On the contract?
Okay. Well,
I mean, it's significant enough money to make sure we do it right, I think. And
I can say.
I got to tell you that I couldn't hear almost anything that Nathan said. The audio keeps cutting out.
Okay. All right. Well,
yeah, I mean, my position is it's worth it to get an opinion from somebody that does bankruptcy day in and day out.
Okay. All right. I guess we can go to discussion, but my feelings are, I remember all these presentations were very impressive, and I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between TSW and Design Workshop and Lord Ekin Taylor. I mean, maybe it's a little flashier. I do believe that was my preference, but it sort of you can't go wrong situation. And with that, my position is we ought to just get these presentations from these two groups and then make a decision and award this contract next Tuesday night. But with that, we'll have discussion. Commissioner Howard, and I think Commissioner Howard's preference was to rebid the whole thing, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But let me say this, Commissioner Howard, before I yield the floor. I just think we're working on this downtown streetscape in Harlem. We all need to do this in concert. We don't need 6 months down. Mr. Wright, he does have a legitimate argument when he says you got a stack of master plans 2 feet high and nothing's ever done. And what's this going to be but just another 2 inches on the stack of master plans? I think that's why we need to proceed. But with that, Commissioner Howard, any discussion on this item?
No further discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No further discussion.
Commissioner Fletcher?
I'm willing to take that vote next Tuesday.
Okay. Commissioner Warburton?
Yeah, same here. I'd be willing to consider the top two or the
Okay.
next two.
Commissioner Langstaff?
I'm in agreement with your position, Mayor, as long as we can legally do it.
Okay. All right. One thing Nathan told you was we have a letter from Lord Ekin Sargent that said if we wanted to select somebody else, that was agreeable, but we'll get you that opinion. Commissioner Young?
No, that's fine then. I didn't hear that. on
Okay.
the
I
audio.
thought you
If
missed
we've
it.
got the letter from them, then that's fine.
Okay. Can we get Commissioner Langstaff that letter, Mr. Davis?
Oh, yes, I'm sure. Myself or Ms. Gaskins can find that
Okay.
letter.
All right. That'll solve that issue. Commissioner Young?
Nothing further.
Okay, could we get this, Ms. Gaskins, I'm sorry, I know, could we get copies of the presentations?
Absolutely.
And maybe if y'all just email them and.
Sure.
Okay,
Be my
so we can
pleasure.
all have the chance to look over this again.
Yes.
And we'll be getting the proposals from TSW and Design Workshop.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so next Tuesday, we'll get that on the agenda, Ms. Talbert, and we'll make a decision between one of those two. And can we also have the presentation where you had the scoring? Can we get that as well?
Yes.
Okay,
I work with Procurement and we'll get that to you.
okay. Thank you, Ms. Gaskin.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Gaskin is going to stay with us. The next item on the agenda is 508 and 510 Pine Avenue.
Yes, sir. 508, 510 is a piece of property that was formerly the home for the Liberty House. The city inherited the property, which was converted back to the city January 2021. There was an agreement back in the 80s where the Liberty House could stay in the space as long as they served clients in that space. As you guys know, they have actually relocated and have a new location. The appraisal has been done for the space, and we're here to ask the Mayor and Commission where their options, what their desire are for this particular location. Staff does recommend that the city considers disposing of this space, whether it be by sale, for those funding dollars, perhaps considering actually putting that into the downtown for the renovation of another building that's owned by us, or another option would be to actually consider it for the land bank. Those are our recommendations.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gaskins. Any question, Commissioner Howard?
No further discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher.
No questions.
Commissioner Warmington.
So I'm trying to understand what our options are. I mean, obviously, we're wanting to dispose of the property.
Correct.
I guess my recommendation is yes, the city needs to dispose of the property and not own a piece of property right there. So then you're insinuating or asking, you know, whatever we get for it, what to do with the funds. So I would almost say we ought to take step number one, agree to dispose of it, get it on the market, I guess list it with a realtor or what have you. And then certainly step two would be if and when it sells, you know, what to do with those funds. So I would probably take it more in that order versus determining where the money goes. Let's kind of get it sold and get an offer on the table and then decide where the money goes. But certainly I would support, yes, the city putting this property up for sale.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No question.
Commissioner Young?
No further questions.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gaskins. Any discussion? Commissioner Howard?
No further discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No discussion.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No discussion.
Commissioner Warmington?
Again, Mayor, so is this going to be on the agenda next week to vote on? And is the proposal to list it? Does it take action of the 7 of us to put a property up for sale, or what are we considering next week?
I think we're just going to authorize staff to list the property for sale.
Okay, so that'll be
My understanding, yeah.
That'll be the resolution or what have you next week.
Because one of the other
If I can interrupt you, declare it surplus, and then you could proceed to offer it for sale.
Is that the way you have to initially declare it surplus?
Yes, sir. And then you could decide whether you want to auction it on the courthouse steps with take bids on it or take sealed bids on it. All of that can be decided.
We can't just list the property?
Yes, sir, you can list
Okay,
it
all right,
if you
okay,
want
all right,
to,
okay,
sure.
all right,
But I'm
okay.
just saying, if you want to get, some competition, you might consider having a bid process. You don't have to take the prices, at a bid, so
Okay.
just
All right.
throwing that out. And by the way, can I have permission to go ahead and record the quitclaim deed that Liberty House signed? It's page 215.
Yes, sir. In the agenda item, it says need approval to rescind it. And I don't
Well,
think
that's
we want
a
to rescind
typo.
it.
That's a
We want to
typo.
accept it, don't we? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So that'll all be what's on our agenda for Thursday. It's the quitclaim deed, declare it surplus, and for us to make a decision how we want to sell it. Either by a realtor listing, by an auction, or what.
I think we could defer to staff, or you could give them instructions, but I think.
I would prefer, if you don't mind, yes, to approve the quitclaim deed and to give us permission to sell the property and just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of figure out how we're gonna get that done and bring something back if you need a further approval.
Okay, all right. Just trying to get clear on what we're considering. So, yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No question.
Commissioner Young.
Yeah, the audio is bad, so I couldn't hear anything the city manager was saying.
Okay. Mr. Carter, can you?
Yes, sir. I was just saying, what we're asking you to approve on Tuesday will be to sign the deed and to sell the property. That's it.
Okay, no further questions.
They're just other options. Of course, we could donate the property. I think the best thing to do is we've got a appraisal now. We know what the value is, and let's get the best price we can for the property, and then we got a happy problem. That's what deciding what to do with the money. I do want to say, Ms. Gaskins' continual struggle is, contrary to what we've heard today from some folks, the city ain't responsible for businesses not making it. I mean, everybody hates the Carter Grill isn't open, but they ain't, anything that's more of a grind than a restaurant. Because Fletcher can tell us that. When Mr. Carter passed away, it's hard to get somebody else to take on that business. And this is a situation downtown. It ain't just people that having a hobby that are open businesses. They taking a risk. And unfortunately, investing downtown is a speculative venture. And whatever we can do to, what they use this term, white box, basically get these buildings ready for somebody to come in, it makes a lot of difference. And so I think if we could use that money, but we'll address that later on. But I would support Ms. Gaskin's maybe premature request for the funds as well as permission to sell the property. Thank you, Ms. Gaskin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. Next, we are going to we're going to an executive session at 11:15. Is that right, Ms. Talbert?
Yes.
Okay. Are we aware of that, Mayor Pro Tem? Commissioner Langstaff, Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir. I got an email notice.
Okay. Commissioner
Yes, sir, I
Langstaff?
received an email about it.
Commissioner Langstaff, you aware of that?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Okay, good news. So the next item is the city manager's update. Mr. Carter.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. This morning, before I do the update, I have a request. The state of Georgia has further grant opportunities for infrastructure, broadband, education, other COVID-related recovery efforts. These are separate items. We have to apply for them separately, but the window of opportunity closes on August 31st. I think the mayor and most of the commissioners are aware of the opportunity from the state. This is outside the money that we've already applied for. What I like to do as a supplement to today's agenda is ask for permission for the staff to apply for, and if awarded, accept those grants. You have an opportunity to actually vote for approval, because I would like to add that to the agenda for your regular meeting on next week, if that's okay.
Okay. Mr. Carter, can you, just for the record, tell us what the applications are?
Yes, sir. Those applications will be for our CSO project, our broadband expansion, and for, man, I can't remember what the last one. I think it was some recovery dollars for, yes, for the Civil Rights Institute.
Okay. All right. I sent everybody a copy of our letter. Mr. Carter and I, Mr. Stock was there, and Mr. Brown was there. We met with the three principals at Government Solutions, the state lobbyist, and basically what we're dealing with here. Mr. Warburton pointed this out a couple of weeks ago. This $2.4 billion in the first tranche of funds, and there'll be another $2.4 billion. This money is allocated to the state, and the Office of Planning and Budget, is that right? Will make the decision, make recommendations to the government about how this money should be allocated throughout the state. And the principals from Government Solutions, I sent everybody an email, let you know that these were their recommendations. We had discussion, and of course our first priority is the separation project, but there are funds for broadband, and the other is for economic development, and one emphasis there is tourism. And so these are just requests, but with that, any questions or comments, Commissioner Howard?
No comment.
Okay, would you be agreeable to?
No questions.
Okay. Commissioner Fletcher?
Yes, I'd be agreeable to vote on it next week.
Okay. Commissioner Warburton?
Yeah, certainly agree with these three. The only additional item, and again, it may be too late, we may not have enough time to put something like this together, but in terms of recreation, you know, we did make applications for the earmarks to Sanford Bishop, Congressman Bishop's office, and I believe we, of course, we got some awards through that process, but I believe we also asked for money for like a teen center at Albany High, and even when I think about the two gyms in South Albany, Henderson and Bill Miller, you know, maybe we should put a package together asking for funds related to, you know, kids, after-school programs, recreation programs, for some dollars to go towards either one of those two projects that we've all talked about.
Yeah, the concern there was, we briefly discussed recreation, and it's really, what the consultants were saying was that that would be a ask for the infrastructure bill, that it didn't, the three, you know, the committees have been established, infrastructure, broadband, and economic development, that it was not a real easy fit in there, but
Okay.
but certainly, I mean, it was, and as I said in the letter, the request for the funding for the separation was just so we can go ahead and get all the engineering funds, and then we have as many projects shovel-ready as possible when the infrastructure comes.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if that's your understanding of the three kind of buckets. And
Yeah.
You know, certainly don't want to waste staff's time. If there's a low chance of approval, there's no reason to go waste a lot of time and energy put something together if we don't think it's going to.
Not for this particular tranche of money, but there may be other opportunities to apply for that. I think the term that they used was, if I remember right, it said pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
They show up PJs.
All right. Well, I'm good then. I mean,
Okay.
that was a good discussion.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir, on this point that we're talking about these state funds. Of course, this is another part of the American Rescue Plan, and as we told you during the budget season, that there was going to be more money for infrastructure. Now, the other projects or possible money that Mr. Worthington had mentioned, we had the discretion to use the other money for that. And then again, as we told you, there's going to even be more money coming once this bipartisan bill comes down from the federal government. Now, at that particular point, if we still have the political will to do projects like after-school projects and want to put more money toward recreation, I hope that we will be considering a budget amendment that will reflect that, because again, when we first talked about this during the budget season and had those discussions, we knew that money was discretionary, and we also knew that infrastructure money was coming. So I think we can, you know, I think we can meet our goals and wants and needs if we have the will to amend that. But again, that's what we should have been talking about with the money that was discretionary from the American Rescue Plan. The other thing too, I know I had some talks with Mr. Carter in terms of this was when he was in his other position as IT director about fulfilling a need, especially here in South Albany with the broadband. We still have, you know, very spotty, almost terrible broadband service from all carriers, and it would be, I think, very beneficial to the community, very beneficial to the residents to increase Albany Utilities broadband services within the city. And I would like to see if we could flesh out maybe a proposal to do that, to start that process, because I think I remember talking to you, Mr. Carter, and we were talking about, you know, how much money it was going to take to kind of increase that infrastructure within the, you know, within the city to get those fiber lines run out to neighborhoods like here in South Albany and East Albany. But those those are something that do address the disparities that we talked about in terms of the direction of President Biden's order for the American Rescue Plan. There's a lot of children who weren't able to use the even the broadband equipment that the school system provided for them to do their lessons. I know my daughter could not use the equipment that she had been given to finish her senior year, and we always had to, you know, leave home and go find some Wi-Fi so she could do her online classes. So that is a definite need, so I hope we can put in a proposal for that as well. Thank you.
Anything else? Ms. Carter?
Yes, sir. The only other thing is, I know everybody's aware that our COVID numbers are still going up. The city's kind of working diligently to try and keep on top of that, and try to protect our employees as much as we can. Your school system opened back up for in-person classes this week. We're anticipating that there may be another uptick as far as how it's going to affect our employees as a result of that. But we'll keep you informed as our numbers continue to rise. But just to make sure that you're aware that we are fighting that battle on the employee front.
There's further explanation. Commissioner Howard had asked that we get an explanation, I guess the public, that who is working at home and what are the conditions and how long do we expect?
We're working a hybrid situation right now. No services have been degraded. Although offices are still open, we're still, seeing the public and all those things. We're just trying not to have as many people in the offices together as possible. So no services have been degraded, and we're leaving it up to the individual department heads to determine who can go home and work from home and when they have to report back to work. But as far as services around the city is concerned, all services still open fully.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Any questions? Ms. Howard?
Mr. Carter, since we are, and we most likely going to see an uptick from the school that opened yesterday, do we still have on all of the city and the county buildings that require masks before you come in?
The city buildings, yes, so we have control of that, but I'm not sure that there is a county mandate.
Oh, so we are having masks, say, when you come in to wear a mask, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, next another question. Since we use this building on Tuesday, is it being sanitized before we come in, or what?
All buildings are being sanitized regularly. We're on a regular sanitizing schedule.
Okay. So this one was sanitized last night before we came in, right?
I can't say the last night, but it's on a regular schedule. I think it's Tuesdays and Thursdays, if I remember correctly. Yes. But I can check just to be sure for you.
It is Tuesday in here.
She says yes, Tuesday and Thursday.
Tuesday and Thursday. So it wasn't clean last night?
No, sir. Today is Tuesday.
Okay. Just want to make sure, Mayor.
Now, clean is different than fogging for, the sanitation piece. It's clean regularly every night.
Okay.
But the fogging only happens on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay. And the reason why I asked, because I see some stuff left here in the trash from the county commissioner.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'll bring that to Ms. McCoy's attention.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions.
Mr. Fletcher?
No questions.
Mr. Warmington?
Two things really, just kind of for, Mr. Carter put an email out to us and about incentives to get vaccinated. I saw in the media where the county is doing something similar to incentivize their employees, but I did want to make sure from the city side that the public knows that we are on the city side doing incentives just like similar to the county, but a little different program that our city manager put together. So I appreciate you doing that, Mr. Carter. And then back to the state applications for realize, and that's one thing I learned at municipal conferences this weekend, is it's not just municipalities or counties that can put in for these funds. It can be nonprofits, business entities, it can be anybody. And so, just some of my network, I've notified when I got back from GMA that anybody can put in. Of course, not everybody's going to be in the sewer business. Obviously, that's kind of limited to cities and municipalities. But the other items, broadband, or even the COVID impacts to business and the community, our nonprofits, our after-school programs, churches, what have you, that they're welcome to submit applications just like we are. And the state may or may not allot them funds as well. So just encourage anybody, if you've got an idea or a program or something, put it together, send it off, and you can go to the state's website, and there's an easy e-apply where anybody can apply for these funds. It's not just cities and counties. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
Those collaborative projects, I think they say will get attention also if you can collaborate with other entities.
Commissioner Young.
Nothing further.
Mr. Davis, we're going to discuss litigation matters.
Yes, I understand it'll be pending litigation, the SGRT lawsuit. Yes, sir.
Okay, any other issues that are going to need to be addressed in executive session?
That's my only understanding. We'll be discussing a proposed tolling agreement in
Okay.
executive session in that lawsuit. Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion to go into executive
Motion to go into
session to
executive
discuss
session
pending litigation?
to discuss pending
Motion is second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Commissioner Howard,
No further discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem,
No discussion.
Commissioner Fletcher,
No discussion.
Commissioner Worthington,
No discussion.
Commissioner Langstaff,
No discussion.
Commissioner Young.
No discussion.
Can we call the roll, Ms. Talbot?
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Mayor.
Mayor votes yes. Okay.
She's leaving. She can't leave.
Not until I get my lunch.
We want to do this first, or make the motion first?
Yeah, we'll do that first.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what, we just entertain a motion, or do we reference what the discussion was?
I think just an announcement and then a vote on
Okay.
a tolling agreement in
And
the
it-
SGRT lawsuit will work, Mayor.
In
Thank you.
executive session, we discussed a proposal from the plaintiff, South Georgia Rails to Trails, the pending lawsuit, to agree that the statute of limitations would be tolled while an application for a state grant to fund the rails project is submitted and being considered, with the understanding that the lawsuit would be dismissed during that time. Is that correct, Ms. Davis?
That's very accurate, yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so the chair would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion to the eloquent description you just had of the tolling agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Howard?
No further discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No discussion.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No discussion?
Commissioner Warmington?
No discussion.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No discussion.
Commissioner Young?
No discussion.
Can we call it for a vote? Ms. Talbot?
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Mayor?
Mayor votes yes. Next, items for the future, any future agenda. Commissioner Howard?
Mr. Mayor, Chief, can you come down for a minute?
Is this other business or item for future agenda?
Of the business.
Okay. Can we hold on, Chief, could we hold on?
No, it's in reference, I want to say to him about further business.
Well, we do another business later.
Okay.
Okay, this is just items for future agenda.
Okay, nothing so far.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Well, I'm gonna let you sort it out, but I think this is new items.
Okay.
I got 3 things, but one's under the business. We're gonna have to go back and look at this dangerous dog ordinance. Or complete it. I have a very serious situation going on the avenues, and I've got wind that the media is basically gonna rake us through the coals if we don't pick this up. And then our speed bump policy, I think that we have to really start looking at doing something to make this a little easier on the citizens and the businesses. And then I think the others under other business. Thank you.
Commissioner Warmington?
Yeah, so a new item, and I had discussion with Mr. Carter about this, so I just want to talk to my colleagues. I just believe that we need to get away from Facebook Live for our city commission meetings. Talked to a lot of cities at the Municipal Association Conference. There are no cities using Facebook Live. And today was the first day I sat here and I watched the comments, and it's just unfortunate. You know, as a commission, we're responsible for being transparent. We're not responsible for giving an avenue for citizens to attack any of us, even put false information out. I think that's wrong to do that. So what I talked to Mr. Carter about is how quick can we get to some kind of platform that just broadcasts our meetings. You know, we're responsible for just putting the meetings out there. We're not responsible for giving some side conversation and things, and actually I believe it confuses citizens when they go back and try to watch and then they see things that are being said. Plus, on top of that, I don't believe staff has time to sit there and watch and monitor the comments and respond and that sort of thing when we're trying to do the work of the city. So I don't know how quick Mr. Carter can get a link on our website or some way where it's just a neutral broadcast with no comments, no way for citizens to say whatever is being said while we're trying to carry on the business of the city. So I don't know if that's something that we can tackle next week, Mr. Carter, or if that's, you need more time, but the agenda item is not to put our live stream on YouTube and not to put our live stream on Facebook, and simply just have a web internet type of link where it's just broadcast, period. Of course, I know it's on channel 16, but it needs to be an internet-based live stream. And so I don't know how fast or how much work is involved in doing that.
We've actually already explored other options, so it's a matter of this board acting, so give us a direction of how you want to go. We can remove it from Facebook Live at any point. Again, we just need the direction of this board to move forward.
Okay. Is that something you want to entertain now, Mayor, or you want to do this next week? Of just getting direction from the 7 of us to tell staff, how we want our meetings broadcast. I guess that's the point. And if they've got a different way of broadcasting it, it needs to come from the 7 of us of how to broadcast our meetings.
Well, that would really be other business, but,
well, no, it's a future item for next week.
I mean,
if you want to be a future item for next week.
If you want to act on it now, it would be other business. But, so if you want to act on it now, we'll come back to it. Okay. Fair enough?
Yeah, if the other colleagues are ready to act on it, yeah.
Anything else?
That's it.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further?
Commissioner Young?
Yeah, I guess to Mr. Workins' request, I wouldn't want to act on anything without some, robust discussion. It's my opinion that, having our meetings on the platforms where people are is beneficial to us in terms of transparency. It might not be our outright responsibility, but it is absolutely imperative that we, keep transparency and keep citizens engaged in what we're doing. I think what we've done, through putting our meetings on streaming has been, at least effective in getting the word out, especially with our COVID-19 press conferences and things like that. So again, like I said, I wouldn't want to act on anything without having a robust discussion. I don't think we should be too hasty in doing that.
Okay.
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
All right. My item for future agenda is I would suggest that we reconsider the policy. Purchases by the utility board under $200,000 don't require approval of the city commission. There's an exception to that when it's a SPLOST project, and I really don't see the reason for that, frankly, because as I pointed out over there, the general manager of the utility board's the city manager, and Mr. Brown's the CEO. We've got one budget. It is coming from SPLOST funds, but I mean, I just don't see the reason that the commission has to approve it. Clearly, the commission could get a notice of all the purchases over a certain amount of money from the utility board, but I just think that's, if you're trying to reduce the workload of the commission, that's something that I think there's a hurdle there that we really don't need to be jumping over every time. Because like I say, it is $200,000. But now, under other business, which Howard, you wanted to hear from Chief Pursley.
No, I need to ask the Chief a question and Mr. Carter a question. Chief, good morning. I was wondering, Chief, good morning, how you doing? I was wondering, can you get Ms. Phyllis Bank to do something? And the reason why is to put it out on our access channel, because what I end up seeing last month is a accident is going to happen, and that if she can put out on something on the access channel is that these dirt bikes, these four-wheelers, things of that nature, is to let it know that it's not permissible to be on the sidewalks or in the road, going down the road, because when you come to East Albany, that area from East Broad back to Turner Job Corps on weekend, it's just like a parade of individuals that is riding. And I was appalled to see in the 1500 block of Gramada Beach week last month was a young guy on a dirt bike and had a baby on the bike and just zigzagging on Maple and Turner Field Road. And that is just an accident is bound to happen, and let the citizen know that because of certain restraints that the police will not be in a pursuit to chase them.
Yes, sir, we'll continue to put that out.
Okay, and I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem, other business?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Well, I think Sonia's working on this, but to bring back the boards vacancies, because I'm getting calls of people that want to get on some boards and sort of want to know what we got out here. So if we can pick that back up, I think maybe we could get some traction on it. Thank you.
Commissioner Warburton?
Yeah, so other business would be for us as a commission to give Mr. Carter some direction. And my proposal is to end Facebook live feed and YouTube live feeds, and for staff to come up with a neutral feed of some sort that's on our website or whatever, how our IT staff can come up with it. But certainly to broadcast the meetings, but just not use the platform of YouTube and Facebook, so that it's just a live feed, period, with no comments. So that would be my proposal. And if we can get a direction from the commission to give Mr. Carter, that'd be great.
Will he need a second on that, or is that just him talking?
I guess it's kind of a straw vote. This is not a technical resolution, or it's just giving Mr. Carter direction as a board. So I guess it would be kind of a form of a motion.
Okay, all right. Well, with that, you want to hear what other people have to say about it?
Sure, yeah.
All right, Commissioner Howard.
Well, in the past, Mr. Warburton, when I object to like the public meeting of public safety, and I'm a firm believer is that there are some sensitive things that we as commission discuss, and like you say, Facebook and other outlet, is that it could jeopardize future accomplishment or goals that we do when the meetings are being Facebook live. Is that I'm realize that is social media really just have taken off in the last 10 years, and it's like you're trying to get the genie out the box. But I do believe that if we're going to, as a commission, to be effective in things of that nature, and sometimes we may not express our full opinion because we realize that we are, being on Facebook, things of that nature. But I'm in agreement that we do some cutback on how we broadcast these meetings, not for the safety, for the safety of the commissioner and the safety of some of these hot issues that we may be discussing, is that it would not be in the best interest that we continue.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, sir, I'm good with looking at a different platform outside of Facebook and YouTube.
Okay. Mr. Fletcher?
I'm good with looking at another platform also.
Okay. Commissioner Warmington?
Yep, I'm good with my own motion.
Okay. Commissioner Langstaff?
I'm fine looking at another option.
Okay. Commissioner Young?
Well, I guess I'm still kind of just confused on what the problem is. Both Facebook and YouTube allow you, if the problem is that the comments, are, I don't know, offensive or whatever, you can always disable the comments for either one of those particular broadcasts. again, finding another platform means that the public has to, more or less find that platform or get an app for that platform. But I think, it behooves us as a government that values transparency is to make ourselves and our public meetings available to be seen and to be heard. There's nothing that we should be trying to hold back or protect ourselves from in a public meeting. If there's sensitive information, that's why we go into executive session. That's the way that works. That's the way the system works. So whatever we're discussing in a public meeting should be heard by the public, and we should be doing everything we can to try and make sure that the public has access. That's how we, create more trust in government and more trust in the decisions that we make as a board. So again, like I said, I don't know what the problems are with using Facebook and YouTube, other than, comments. I mean, people make comments about me all day long on social media and under the comments for these broadcasts. But again, they have the ability to be, have the comment sections removed. Used to have a whole lot of problems with the comment section that WALB used to have under their broadcasts and their stories online, but they removed that comment portion. But, again, those are the main platforms where people can easily access public meetings, public information, and I think that's, what we should be trying to do whenever possible. Again, we can't be behind the curve with everything. If everybody's on those particular platforms, that's where we need to be as a city, and not trying to engage the public on those places where they are. I think is a disservice to the citizens.
Mayor, if I can provide a rebuttal, the last statistic I looked at Facebook, I think only 65% of the typical person is even on Facebook. So by having Facebook as our primary feed, you're already excluding 35% of the typical population. I actually had a comment made to me several weeks ago of somebody who said, hey, I'm not on Facebook. Or maybe I said, you can go back to Facebook and watch a meeting. And they're like, well, I'm not on Facebook. How do I go watch a meeting? And I was like, well, you can go to YouTube. And they're like, well, I don't really do YouTube. So, there is no platform that's perfect. What I was just asking Mr. Carter is to have our website is the link where anybody and everybody, no matter if you do social media, if you don't do social media, you can go to the city's website. That's where all the forums, that's where everything is used, and anybody can click on it and watch it. And and there's no social media spin or comments.
We actually already have that in some form, because the actual YouTube site is posted to our regular city site. YouTube is just a platform, not necessarily simply a social media platform, but it's a video platform where they can live stream through YouTube to our city website, which I assume they're still doing. I know they started off doing that, and that I don't think that on our city website, www.albanyga.gov, I don't think there's any in that particular site. So again, it's not necessarily about that being our only platform. I think that's probably the most popular platform, is because that's where many people are. So if they want to, I guess if the problem is they want to see them when they get ready, maybe we should create a page where they can go right to a particular dated meeting and be able to click on that from our website, instead of having to go through, or go directly to YouTube or go directly to Facebook. And then, of course, there's always our public access channel, I don't know if we're running our meetings, other than that one time, live on, whatever, I can never remember the station channel, but maybe we need to, you know, see about broadcasting them, multiple times other than just the one time.
Okay, my thoughts about this, I don't think we need to make a decision. I think the best approach would be to have it on the agenda for maybe the first work session in September. I essentially agree with what Commissioner Warmington's talking about. Some of the comments are just so nasty. There's no basis for a lot of what people say. And the point here is we're not talking about denying the public access. The public's going to have an opportunity to watch the meetings. The city of Albany doesn't have to air its meetings. We've made the decision collectively. I think it's the right decision, but it's quite a different thing to allow people to take pot shots and make comments. There's just no censorship, and it seems to be that when folks start making allegations, that the next person is going to try to one-up it. I don't think it's positive for the city. It's not an issue of transparency, because as I said, people are going to get to see the meetings. They just don't have an opportunity to make whatever outlandish comments they want to make. And if we could suppress that from the Facebook, I think that would accomplish the objective. But if we can't, we just need to go to another platform. And what I would respectfully suggest, if Commissioner Warmington would permit, is just let's put it on the agenda first time in meeting in September, and let's have a presentation from staff about what the alternatives are. But clearly, I think we have the directive, the consensus is to see what our options are. Is that okay, Commissioner Warman?
No, I think 5 of us were in support of, whatever Mr. Carter comes up with, is to have a way to simply broadcast the meetings. That's all we're asking, and leave it to the experts to decide how to do it and use city resources. I'm not an expert in multimedia platform. The key thing is not to have that feedback back and forth and to have what you said. So I think there's over majority support to give staff that direction, and they don't really need us to tell them to use brand A or brand B or brand C of a broadcast, and just for them to use the best. That's what we pay staff to do, is to come up with solutions.
Mr. Carter, do you want to put?
Yes, sir. We have options we can either suppress comments, we can use a different platform, we can stream it from our website. It's always on Channel 16. There are other options as far as this is concerned. What we need right now, or whenever you guys decide to make the decision, is what is it that you want to happen? Give us that direction, and we'll figure out a way to make that thing happen for you.
Okay, all right. And Ms. Davis, can we go ahead and take a vote on this? Is that is that what you want? You want to take a?
You can, but discussion. The city manager has what y'all want.
Well, again, Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to say this. Once again, we're doing, something without necessarily having the public's input. Mr. Warburton made the suggestion in a work session at the end of a meeting. Again, you say this is not about transparency, but again, many people probably are not paying attention at this point in the meeting on social media to know that the next time they come to Facebook, the next time they come to YouTube, that the broadcasts are not going to be available. So, again, I think we really just need to really think about what it is we're trying to achieve. If you have problems with the comments or the nastiness in the comments, there is a way to disable the comments. That's not a, uncommon thing. That's not in need of any expert opinion or anything like that. Just say we don't want the comments at the bottom of the broadcast, and that could be easily remedied. But again, if you go away from the major platforms that our citizens use, then again, that's decreasing transparency. That's just decreasing access, just by default. We go to a platform where people don't have something, or they got to download another app, or they got to, do something extra, then that's again, not making it readily available, and especially when the TAC has already done a great job at putting this together, and getting it to a certain point. I think it would be, and that's okay. That's my expertise as a tech guy to say it probably would be, infinitely easier for them to just disable the comments on those particular platforms that we don't want to see.
Okay, but the public doesn't have a right to make comments or narratives of what's going on in the meeting or interrupt the meeting, and that's basically, I take issue with that, but, I need some direction here. Are we gonna take a vote?
Well, I think 5 of us gave enough direction to Mr. Carter to bring something back. So maybe by next Thursday or Tuesday, whatever the method of us broadcasting our meetings, if he could bring that back next week. And he technically doesn't need our, approval, but certainly he probably wants our direction. Okay. So is to have it next week. One follow-up I would want, Mr. Davis, I was under the impression that you can't turn off comments. It seemed like I'd read some other municipalities, and the reason some folks even expressed it to me at the municipal conference was that a city can't disable comments, because then that would be censoring. If you put it out there on a certain platform, you can't then either silence people or remove a comment, and I guess unless it's inflammatory or so that's one of the precarious things of social media is, as a city, if we participate in social media and we put things out there, you kind of have to let what happens in the social media world, is what my understanding is from a legal standpoint.
I'll take a look at it.
I'm gonna say you might want to look at that, if it's as easy as turning off comments, that would be an easy fix, but it's my understanding you can't just turn off comments, but Mr. Davis can maybe look at that.
We can definitely, technically, we can turn those off. I don't know about the legal side of it. I have to defer on that one. Okay. But we have other platforms that you can use also to accomplish the same thing. Facebook is not the only option.
Yeah, I would think in a broad-based form, the mayor just said, we don't have to hear from citizens at all. So I don't see how we would be bound to, just because we're using Facebook, we have to allow comments under Facebook. If we don't have to hear from citizens at all, legally, then you don't have to hear the comments under the Facebook thing. That doesn't quite make a lot of legal rationale just in that explanation, but that's just me.
Okay. Items for the, other business, Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further.
Okay. Commissioner Young, other business?
No, nothing further.
Okay, I have 2 issues. First, the number of alcohol licenses. Of course, we had 2 today, and they were both transfers. But Mr. Norman's got us this information before, but I would like to know, just for my own information, Mr. Carter, how many of those 215 alcohol licenses are restaurants? Because I'm thinking that's going to be a large percentage. And secondly, it came up today, apparently there's a policy that if any member of the public wants to speak on any item that's on the agenda, they're allowed to speak. Is that right, Ms. Talbot?
Mayor, all that's at your discretion.
Okay, well, I don't want to, I don't need to have.
And we're working on that policy.
We need to have a policy.
Yeah, we're working on that policy.
I think that's not a good policy to let anybody speak just because something's on the agenda. And because we've seen before, some people have talked 3 times on an item that's on the agenda. But I guess Mr. Brooks is working on, is that going to be addressed in there, Mr. Carter?
That's addressed in there.
Okay, so I just, you know, if we, this is a problem, we've got a policy, and Ms. Talbert says you got discretion. Well, we need to treat everybody the same, and if you start saying, well, it's up to the mayor, you're going to have some people that are going to be mistreated, and obviously folks feel like they've been denied an opportunity to speak when other people were afforded an opportunity to speak. And Commissioner Fletcher had something she wanted to say?
Well, I just want to say, and just really cut off what you said, Mayor. You know, sorry. You know, I think any of us that are, can you hear me? John, you didn't cut me off. You know, I think any of us that sit up here, we realize that we got to put on our big boy and girl panties because that's part of the job. But what we can't control, and it happens all the time, is we get a speaker that comes up here, you know, and it becomes like a debate. It's going to be 5 minutes of what we've not done, 5 minutes of how they would do it, or if you ask them point blank like I did today, what would you do different? You really can't get no answer, you know, and I think that's what a lot that is happening on Facebook is these people are hearing and they just think it's facts. And I'm going to be for stopping Facebook and YouTube for the simple reason, again, you know, it's a shame that they say horrible things about us with no facts. That's on them. We have zero control of that speaker for 5 minutes when we give it to them. And I'm like the mayor, I've seen the same person up there over and over and over. So I'm glad that we're looking at a different policy. I don't think we're trying to shut anyone out, but I think we clearly have the right to shut the nasty, the negative, and the false narratives that are continually being put out. So thank you, Mayor, for giving me time to go around.
Well, with that, it's 12:05. Appreciate everybody's attendance, participation, and service, and with that, we'll be adjourned.
Mayor,
We got a dinner.
we've got all the lunches in the kitchen back here.